and he's going to give us our audit exit summary. Welcome, Virginia. Rest of the staff, happy March. Oh, and Mike, I'm sorry, everybody. Well, you met him before. I didn't meet him until we had a beer the other night.
We did, but we forgot his name already.
Yeah, so
Mike's name.
we welcome Mike Schrobakin, who's the District 5 director. Randy, do you want to go ahead?
I sure can. I guess you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, yes, we've been out at the co-op. We left yesterday about noon and finished up the audit. Everything went well. We originally were scheduled to be there through today, actually, but we were able to add another person to our team, so that helped us get through a little bit early. But also, the records were in excellent shape, and so that always makes the audit a little bit smoother and go a little bit better. In your audit, we did have a couple entries, really just unusual items that are not recurring. One of them, you had on your mountain park services, you had a new lease, the ground lease that we realized was there this year. We had to go ahead and record that. So all it was an asset and liability recording. On the mountain parks electric side, we did make an adjustment to the FEMA receivable a little bit. Charlie, one of my other partners that was with me, he went through that with Emily, and they kind of came up with an amount that they thought was a little bit more of a for sure amount. So that decreased that accounts receivable and then would increase your construction work in progress. I think that entry was about 470,000. So no margin impact on any of that. So it went really well. We, like I said, the records were in good shape. We had a couple items that we decided not to record. One of them was a liability that you have for about 110,000. It was with one of your contractors, I think your fiber contractor, that you it was already paid in January and taken care of and everything, and it would just be to AP and work in progress. So we decided not, since that didn't have any margin impact, that we were going to just leave that and not make it this year. And then also you've got with one of your fiber company, that your original one, you've got some bills you owe him, but yet they're also late due to that contract. I'm sure y'all probably talked about this. And so they're going to owe you some back. We're not sure exactly what the amounts were on that, but our estimates have it where you're about 60,000 that you would owe them. But that's still a work in progress. So we're not going to do anything on that. That's kind of still sitting out there. But anyway, we'll see. I think y'all are working with them on that. But so went really smooth. Nothing really to report that we have any concerns about. You've got some, obviously you've got the new CEO, you've got a new CFO. But I really was pleased with how it went and how the records looked. So.
Thank you, Randy. Are there questions for Randy?
Yes, if you guys don't mind, I'll just let you know procedurally, Randy and I have talked about, when they would come in and give the final report, and we're anticipating that being in April. Is that still correct, Randy?
Yes. I believe it's April 13th, right?
Yep. And we can do that virtually if that's what the board would prefer.
Yeah, that's your preference. If you want me there in person, I can do that as well. So.
Was the land lease for solar or one of our cell towers, or?
It's a ground lease for your Fraser solar. You don't own the land there. You do own the land on the Walden. So, yeah.
The lease is with Grand County, and there was some confusion as to whether or not it was to be payable by CoBank or by us. And Levi and I worked that through, and it was determined that we actually owed it, so we paid them this year for the last 2 years.
So any other questions?
Thank you, Randy.
All right. Thank y'all. Y'all have a good meeting.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that was very quick.
So is our time here.
So far, the meeting's going well. We're going to hold off.
6 minutes.
I know, 6 minutes. We're going to hold off on approving the minutes until we track one thing down on them, just to make sure we're correct. Levi, is there anything you'd like to report in open session?
No, so you should have my attorney's report now on the iPad. Tiffany got those up for me this morning. I'll have executive session matters to update you on.
Okay, great.
That one's there.
Managers and safety report.
So this month, if you guys don't mind, Mark is going to give the manager's report, as everything that we're reporting on was before I was here. So Mark, I'm going to turn that over to you for your report.
Okay, under community solar, we have an introduction call next Monday with Cloud Break to introduce them to Virginia. And then we still have not finalized the draft PPA that they gave us. So that I'm sure will be a topic of discussion. And I think that Virginia has a plan to move forward with that and the legal review of that contract. So do you want to speak to that?
No, but
Okay.
yeah, you got it.
On the CTP or contract termination payment on the 14th, Tri-State filed a revision to the rate schedule for the modified CTP methodology. The filing proposed modifying the methodology to include a withdrawal agreement and other ancillary agreements to be executed by Tri-State and the exiting members. The agreement also included financial penalties for members that do not consummate a noticed exit. So if you say that you're going to leave and you don't leave, or you don't leave on time, there are financial penalties that include costs, among other things, that Tri-State has incurred. On Tuesday, I believe it was, the five parties filed responses to Tri-State's filing: Basin, Poudre Valley, United, Northwest Rural Public Power District, and Guzman. The responses were, for most of them, protest and comments and requests for intervention in any docket that might follow. Of the 5 responses, 3 requested that the commission reject Tri-State's filing, and 1, Poudre Valley, supported the filing. We had discussed, or I had a discussion about Tri-State's filing with United last week, and they offered to allow us to review and potentially sign on to their filing. Discussed that with Liz in Virginia. They provided us with a draft of it. We reviewed it, provided some comments, and then joined United's filing with the commission. And basically the 3 high points, it's 47 pages, but the 3 high points are that we're requesting the commission reject Tri-State's revised modified CTP procedures with prejudice, which would mean that they could not fix any defects and then refile it. They're going to just have to make a new filing, which sounds like a lot, but what they will probably do is just fix it and then refile, but then it goes through the notice period again. In the alternative, requested that the commission find that the new procedures cannot be retroactively applied to the 3 Tri-State members that have already given their 2-year notices, and that they be under the current tariff. And those 3 would be United, Northwest Rural Public Power District, and Mountain Parks. And then lastly, regardless of their avenue to adjust it, that it does not find, the commission find that it does not reach a just, reasonable, and unduly discriminatory conclusion, and that to make it effective on the 3 that have already filed violates the filed rule doctrine, which basically says once you file something and it's been noticed, you can't go back and retroactively apply it to somebody previously. So we'll pause there for a moment to see if there are any questions on that. And we have the docket, and we can send that out to the board members if you want to read it, as well as all of the parties that filed.
And if we get too specific, we might want to go into executive session on it. But I think if it's a,
I've got a question. How does the withdrawal penalty, how do we set currently with that, or that's still all in limbo?
That's what's being discussed. in
Okay,
this
so that's
right, so-
still in limbo.
Yes, and the filing that United made that we joined onto, so that's our filing as well,
You're opposing that item.
is opposing that, right, is opposing the ability of Tri-State to impose a fee retroactively.
And the short answer to your question too is nobody knows what the penalty is, because they're going to assess it based on a number of things, and they haven't done those things yet, and so they don't know what they would end up charging you for it.
which was another point that United made, that this would give them a carte blanche to charge whatever they want.
If it'd be helpful for the board, we can, as Mark said, we can put our joint filing with United and then all the other filings that have, come out this week on CTO or something like that, make it available to you guys so you can easily access them.
I can also send you just a link to the Frick Library page, because that has,
All
we'll
of it.
have all the filings related to that document.
Now, one thing, Carl, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So if there are no more questions, I'll move on to partial requirements. On February 14th or 13th, met with Tri-State and the other signers to the partial requirement settlement at Tri-State. It was an opportunity for Tri-State staff and attorneys to present alternatives to the 6 signers on that. They are attempting to potentially eliminate the need for a preferred hearing that has been scheduled as part of that process. After about 3 hours and them going over it and discussing it, the parties that signed on to it, as well as Tri-State, consensus was reached on any of the proposals that they made. They are going to do some additional work to see if they can come up with something. I think that it's unlikely. So any questions about the partial requirements?
Real quick, make sure I understand. Tri-State met with the entities that had signed on with the settlement,
Yes.
trying to find another
Trying to
settlement
find
that would not be opposed.
that would not be opposed or would get around the opposition of any party.
Okay.
Okay, FEMA update, and I'm sure that Adam's going to provide more information on this, but our scope change related to Highway 125 project cost was approved and obligated by FEMA on Friday, March the 3rd. We're still working on the scope change related to Trail Creek. Both require an extension of their obligation because both run out on May 31st. And we don't anticipate that will be an issue. But there is more work to do. So Adam's going to tell you along.
Which creek is that?
Trail Creek.
Trail.
And then the last item that I had, as mentioned at the board meeting last month, there was a possibility that the District 1 election, that we may have more candidates that would make it more difficult, more than one, more than two, that would make it more difficult for any candidate to receive a majority of the votes. And that is a requirement of Article 3, Section 4D. And it appears to be more likely now than it was last month because we have 3 candidates currently for that seat and a 4th that has expressed that they are going to turn in their petition before the deadline next week. So that would be 4 candidates. I think that it makes it extremely unlikely that one of the four will reach the majority, which means that a runoff election will be required. And that is covered under policy D8, Article 3, L. And it says that if someone does not receive a majority of the votes cast, then there is a runoff election of the top two candidates on the initial ballot. The board will need to have a special meeting to allow members to vote in person, or they can vote by mail. And of course, we would have the drop box out here that we have for members to drop their ballots in. The special meeting has to be held no later than 90 days after the annual meeting. And if there is a tie vote, that meaning both of the top two candidates get exactly 50% of the votes, then it is decided by a coin flip. And the coin flip is conducted by a member of the election supervisory committee. Rob and I had worked on coming up with a bunch of questions for the board on what you would want to do. And then Levi this morning pointed out that there actually is something in the policy that deals with the runoff. The couple of questions that were not answered by the policy is last month you approved the date of record, which was April 3rd.
No, that's this one.
This one. So the question, and Levi and I discussed this morning after looking at the policy, as to whether or not that remains the same date of record. And since you're going to have that on your agenda today, you can clarify that that would be the date of record for any runoff as well. And then the only other question would be two questions. How we would notify the members of District 1 that there was going to be a runoff election. And I would believe we would do it the same way that we notified them of the original election, which is mailing a notice within the CCL to all our members, even if all the members within District 1, even those members that have opted out of receiving the CCL.
Question, how much time do we have to, so we won't know until May 13th for sure. May 13th for sure that we don't have someone who gets 50%. And then what's the time frame to get that? How?
Well, but it would be 90 days
90
after
days
that,
after
so
that.
you'll
Right,
have sufficient time to get it into the CCL.
But we could,
Yeah, but then what's the notice from the time we're supposed to notice the people to the election? Is there a time frame there? Between the notice and
it's
the
not
election?
specified within that.
Unspoken.
Yeah.
Unspoken,
Yeah,
okay.
we don't.
Well, then we have time.
We have 90 days. I talked to the election vendor. They said they can crank out the mail ballots in 3 weeks.
Okay,
So
I know about everything. But I said I know about everything.
The deadline for submission of the petitions is a few
March
days
15th.
out,
Right, yeah.
Next
Next
Tuesday.
week.
and there's 4, you said.
There's 3 that we have. A
And-
4th that has indicated that they are collecting signatures and will turn it in before the deadline.
We know for sure 3.
Okay, for sure 3.
I think 2 have contacted me. I've talked to 2 of them. I actually even told them about the 50%. Very sure, just make sure. But I guess something just in general, and this is probably raw, but would we want to facilitate with Sky High News possibly a candidate question? I know we haven't done that in the past, but with maybe so many people running for a position to at least, once we know, can we do that? Put it in similar to when somebody runs for school board or.
In the election that Freddie was elected, we did not initiate anything with Sky High, but both Craig and Dick Zeef had the opportunity to do something with Sky High. And Craig can probably tell us what, I think that whether it was letter to the editor or somehow there was an opportunity for both to be in the Sky High.
And remember, you have to submit a kind of a personal statement. Yeah, through petition too, which is published as part of the election process. But what I did was I sent them a little, I don't know what if you call it an op-ed, and it had a picture, and they published it. And it was just a short little blurb saying Healy announces his candidacy or petition or whatever.
Right, and then
It was just a little,
yeah. A few weeks after that, Dick had submitted, and I think his was a letter to the editor or something.
yeah, similar, yeah.
To answer your question, I think it's a matter of precedent since we've not done that before. Get ourselves in any sort of trouble by requiring that of this truth. I don't know, Levi maybe could chime in on that. We've never required that before.
Well, I don't think requiring it, I just thought if we help facilitate it,
I would say from where I've been previously, and we can certainly consider this, but we don't have to do it. But the other 3 co-ops I've worked at has done a publication, with the newspaper of all the candidates running for every position, whether it's uncontested or contested. And the same questions have been asked of every candidate in the packet that they pick up to become to petition on to be one. So then you've got the same answers to all the same questions. Different answers to all the same questions. And then we submitted that to the papers to run a story. That way it's just consistent across the board for uncontested or contested. The same information was included in the ballots each time. And that's how it's been done at all the co-ops I've worked for. I don't know that it'd be a problem to do it here, but it would be setting a precedent. And then you just kind of make that part of your election process. Other than that, you can leave it up to the candidates to choose to contact the newspaper on their own. I don't see any reason why it'd be a legal issue. All you're doing is providing information about people who are running for the board.
Those are the details is all I was,
Yeah.
From a general standpoint, I don't have an issue with it, but I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, our newspapers have done it for political candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So
Any other thoughts on that at this point?
July, could we use our board meeting as a potential special meeting? Or would we be able to timing wise get it done, do you think?
But it's
August, I think that's more than 90 days out because that would be more than 90. Or even if we adjusted our.
But it's a special meeting for the members.
Yes.
Right, it's not for us, it's a special meeting for, we could conceivably have it.
Because it'll only be
same.
for this election.
Right,
But we're open for them.
Not there'll be a huge turnout.
well, you never know,
Even
Levi.
if there is.
Okay, yeah, we could put it on the July, let's do that.
And you can hold it in the community room because I don't expect that many people will show up for it. And it would be basically the first 20 minutes of the annual meeting where you open up to voting, you close the voting, and then you announce the hopefully the winner, or you flip the coin.
And you need a quorum of 50, right, Levi, to do that?
Is it a quorum?
I don't,
that
I have to
district?
look back to see what your quorum requirement is. I don't know off the top of my head. Every call.
Get a
is
quorum
different.
for the votes.
That's gonna be the challenge, maybe.
Was the quorum for the election or the quorum for the annual meeting change of bylaws
Special meeting.
or both?
We'll have to look
Yeah.
into all of that between now and next board meeting, because we'll know how many candidates we have, how likely it is that we're going to be in this runoff situation. And then if you guys don't mind, the staff can bring you a recommendation on how we handle notification, for one, how we handle the voting, two, whether we have drop boxes, mail ballots, out, all of those. We'll make recommendations for all of that and when the meeting would be.
The how they vote is set in the policy. So
Mail.
mail and in-person meeting.
Okay, yes, in person, but whether or not we have drop boxes and those pieces.
We have a Dropbox.
We have the
Okay.
Dropbox, and since we have to have in-person, SBS is going to have to come here, so I think might as well put the Dropbox out, even if nobody puts anything in there or nobody shows up to vote, since they have to come here in the possibility that that does happen. I think that that part is really set by the policy.
But anyway, food for thought, let's move the meeting along.
Yeah.
There's more to T's to cross and I's to dot on how we do this going forward. And I have to say, it's the first one that since I've been on the board that's happened like this, so.
Well, 4 people is a good sign of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
No. Okay, what's next on the managers?
That's the
Adam?
end of my report.
All right, well, morning, everyone. Morning.
Morning, Ed.
So at safety review, you've got the slides in front of you. Interesting fact, in that first slide there, that's actually a picture of a little.
Do you want me to help you?
Which one are we?
Cost matters, but pros there behind the fence post, kind of hidden hazard, you know?
Oh, okay.
But moving to the next one, property damage
Oh,
incidents.
that's cool.
We did have a couple in February. We had an employee that cut his thumb while he was sharpening his knife. Had to get some treatment,
Yeah.
no lost time, he didn't have some treatment. And then when criminally, we had a work truck slide
Okay.
right there with the key pad. Because he was entering the code and it slid over and kind of damaged the rubber of the truck. So some of the corrective actions we've had stemming from some of those things, we had to stand down with all the operational employees to kind of review these incidents and refocus on safe work practices. And we also covered a safe start, which kind of covers your state of mind. Are you rushing? Are you frustrated? Are you fatigued? Complacent and stuff like that, which leads to your eyes not on task and mind not on task. That was a good eye-opening experience for a lot of people to kind of rate your state before you can do stuff, because we all are busy or rushing or tired every day, and so it's good to think about what you're doing. A couple other things is we purchased some knife sharpening stations for our employees that actually use tools that need to be sharpened, to kind of give some consistency and a procedure and a policy to it, versus just kind of using whatever. So that's going to be put in place in March. And then we're looking into adding some gate openers to our fleet over in Kremling. That way they don't have to reach out of the truck and push the gate code. Plus, they're also going to mitigate by maintaining some of the ice and snow around the front of the gate there as well. Some other highlights in February, we had a training meeting. We had a fire drill with everybody here. We had an all-hands meeting, and we did a fire drill with everyone here, which is a little bit different because that's happened before, so that was good to do that. We talked about the Bridgestone driving school, so people that attended the class kind of gave a debrief, and then also showed a 30-minute video that they provided as well. Kind of covered some driving topics for everyone to kind of get a little taste of it. And then CREA was here to do our fleet dielectric testing also, so that was completed. Moving on to the March safety trainings. So first aid CPR, in fact, the first class is today. 30 minutes it starts. It's down here at Granby EMS. We've got about half of our employees going today, and then we'll have another half going on the 23rd. And all you are welcome to join in as well if you want to partake in that. Just let you know today. Yeah, so if you want to go today, just grab your stuff, go down there. But it's an 8-hour class. It's a little bit different than what we've done in the past year, but it's a little more burst into the CPR first aid, because let's just, if you're gonna have to use that in the field or anywhere for that matter, you need to know what you're doing. It needs to be quality training. So we partnered with those guys down there, and I think that'll be good. And then a couple other things that really aren't safety related, but they're kind of quality related and different things. We've had a lot of customer compliments on not only our line crews and working in adverse conditions safely, but also our customer service up front. I've got a lot of compliments as well. Handling customers in an efficient manner, things of that nature. So I just wanted to throw those in there. We talked about that at the all hands meeting. Really good job by the whole team. And then lastly, I'm not sure if some of y'all have heard, but there was a fallen lineman, I think it was in Kentucky. Ohio, I'm sorry, back in the Midwest. And we had shared that with our group back at one of our safety stand downs, kind of what happened, limited knowledge we had about it. And then we started the donation here internally. And so you can see we had donations of $740 from MPE employees. And then as a corporate group, we stepped up and added another 500. So it was a good thing, good morale builder, try to, line them. They all work on the same kind of things, all dangerous situations. And so it's always good to have that kind of family bond and reach out. So just wanted to share that as well.
Did you take that picture?
No, I can't take credit for it. I took it off Facebook. There was a photographer here that was shooting some photos out by Grand Lake, and they caught that, some pictures of that. The mountain lion has been causing a lot of havoc.
Do you want to stay? Because if you don't, then you should probably give Derek Wolf a call.
I just thought that first picture was pretty cool, man. It's hanging behind that little. It's an awesome picture. It is an awesome picture, but it's hazards are everywhere, right? So.
I didn't see it first 2 times. So you pointed out now.
Will the CPR class be on like an every other year renewal, every year renewal?
It's a 2-year, yeah, every 2 years.
Okay.
Any other questions for Adam? Okay, do we know if, Tiffany was checking if this
They're
East
not-
Grand
they're
is
not
not
here.
coming? Okay, and they're not coming on Zoom. And, okay, so then we'll go into the West Grand Education Fund request. I was hoping that
What did you just say? It's not coming?
East Grand School District was supposed to,
It was up under public comment.
Oh, Middle Park?
yeah, Middle Park, yeah.
Middle Park High School is
Middle
East
Park.
Grand or is
Yeah,
Middle Park?
Middle Park High School.
Okay.
It is part of East Grand.
Yeah. Okay. They're not coming.
They're not coming, I'm sorry, Middle Park High School. West Grand Education Fund request. Did folks get a chance to take a look at that? And I'm going to throw it to Mark Volt since that's his high school down there.
It's the first I've heard of it. My kids are out of school, so I wish they were still in. It sounds like a cool trip.
I looked at it. It sounds like a wonderful trip. I'd like to go. I was not sure what the ask was.
I think it's.
And there's, on one of the slides at the end, there's, or not at the end, there's like a remaining
The fourth slide.
total balance still due from groups, 12,939. Is that the ask or is that they're still working on contributions?
I think that they will accept any amount, but they have done, in the other slides, it talks about the fundraising that they've done to this point from other organizations and then some of the things that they've done. So they're trying to raise that remaining $12,939.
And it looks like it's cut off a little. This is the FBLA, right? The Future Business Leaders of,
Yes.
okay, of America.
How much do we, or I know we help some in East Grand for the Washington DC trip for 8th graders, which usually I think sometimes.
In the past, I know this, I haven't seen recent numbers, but in the past, we would pay for the cost of one trip. And then that would be split up among everybody who went and lower their costs. Otherwise, we get into, if you accepted one student's request.
That has like 80 students that go, so that's best.
Is that the 5274
Yes.
per student?
Which is considerably more than the DC trip. It's about, I think, like 1,100 per kid.
Longer plane ride.
12 hours.
Carl, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not at the moment. I don't really think that Mountain Parks should be in the business of funding trips like this, but at the moment, I don't have any thoughts.
Hi, Craig. What do you guys?
Have we done this before,
We've never done this particular trip before.
or a trip?
We have done a trip. I think we've done the Washington DC trip for
Okay.
Middle Park High School, but to what degree, I'm not certain.
I think we
One
paid
can
for
say.
the cost of
One
one trip.
person.
Yeah.
And it lowered everybody who was going.
Right.
You know, $100 off of everybody's else's cost or something.
And that was about 1,100?
I don't think it's much.
Yeah, I don't know I'd have to look. I don't know.
It's had age grade to go
Is
last
that-
year, so I think it's around that.
So where does
I'm
the money
curious.
come from?
Okay, so just we'll take a brief detour. You and I talked about Mountain Parks being a co-op and having margins.
Yeah.
And then having to return those
Right,
to our
right. I think you
members.
mentioned that,
And
yeah.
then sometimes we can't find those members
Right,
to
that goes
return
into a
them,
fund.
and that goes into a fund.
How big is
Or-
that?
It's about one.
Oh, okay. So it's not like this is not a huge.
$1.9 million.
And if I recall, the annual contribution's about 300,000 to 400,000
Okay.
a year.
And what do we normally do?
Scholarships.
So we do.
We do scholarships.
Yeah, we
Okay.
do scholarships, we do driver's ed, we do donation to the charitable trust that covers some of the smaller things. In the past, we've done electric school bus in West Grand. We have done a big donation to the Mountain Family Center when they were rebuilding their building. We have North Park in 1 year. We gave them enough money to buy Chromebooks for all their school.
Oh.
And we have currently 150,000 that we've committed to the East Grand School District to help them upgrade their electrical facilities to get 2 electric buses.
Okay.
What else? During the pandemic, we actually gave some of the money from it to local nonprofits, and those nonprofits help people with their energy bills, so their electricity didn't get shut off. It's pretty
Wide open.
Yeah, the preschools don't have a tax base, and childcare is a big need here. So we've set up some programs for early childhood screenings and funds to help them retain their employees if their employees have financial emergencies. So it's pretty wide open.
And it's on the agenda, yes, talking about the charitable trust gets a portion of that, potentially looking at giving them more. So they field a lot of smaller donation requests and things like that. So they're trying to get 20,000 a year, but if.
Okay, so back to this request, and then later we are going to talk about how we handle requests.
To me, this is a great opportunity. I look at it as much a scholarship as anything else. And I think our maximum scholarship's about 3,500, somewhere in there. And I kind of look, the educational benefit of this trip for these kids to broaden their horizons is I think, really valuable. So I'm totally in favor of it. And I guess discussion on how much is later, executive session?
No. It'd be now. It'd be in a motion now, I think.
I'd make a motion to provide $5,000 to be split equally among the students rather than one student.
Is there a second? Or and if not,
I'll second.
okay. And is there discussion?
5,000?
Yeah, 5,000.
What do we think, if they get other opportunities so that ask is 13,000, approximately 12,900.
Well, look, so there's 20 students and
Yeah, I
it's
don't-
5,000 a student, right? So they've already,
I don't think they've given a.
so they've already collected,
They say they've only paid 3 students off of the
Right.
20.
yeah, so the math doesn't add up, but
Yeah.
that's like $100,000.
I believe that the total that they started with was around $120,000. And as Levi said, in it says that 3 have actually paid off theirs fully.
Oh, okay.
So
12,000 remaining
$12,000
amongst
is spread
20.
across the remaining 17 students, and potentially, I think there's 3 chaperones as well, and I don't know if the chaperones pay their own money.
It's quite a bit of students.
Well, they've collected a ton already, sounds like.
Or they're self-funding it.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Well, the math is wrong.
Okay,
When was the trip? Did you, I didn't,
July, I think.
it's this summer trip.
July 16th through 15th.
Wonder if $35 karaoke is included.
Yeah.
I could amend my motion to
We'll just pay for the.
all right. Have you guys, do you have any more questions or discussion? Okay, there's a motion to grant $5,000 from the Education Community Fund to the West Grand Japan trip. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, the next agenda item is the RESP agreement approval.
So I can, want me to tell you that?
Yep. So, we're being, reminded why we, got out of RUS. One of the reasons. We're still moving towards it. We think it's gonna happen. It just doesn't happen as quickly with the federal government as we would like sometimes. Gone back and forth, I'm not worried with the details, other than to say that we're just got another email from them to do another thing we need to do. Hopefully we'll have this, hopefully next month we'll be able to wrap it.
Okay. Thank you.
Part of the beginning.
No, that's it.
Yes, every time we get close, then they decide that they want to do something slightly different because we've got somewhat come full circle. We started out and they were going to utilize the modified agreement, and then we went through and we're going to do something else. And I think we're back around to where we started.
Okay, so, and for Mike's information, RESP is the Rural Energy Savings Program. It's a fund that comes through the Rural Utility Service. And Mountain Parks was applied for and awarded $10 million at a 0% interest rate. And we will use that money to allow our members to make investments in their properties that will save them energy or whatever. And so that's the program. But as we refinanced from the whole co-op from RUS to Bank and CFC, this loan is sort of hanging out there, and that's why we're working on that.
The loan is the basis of our Electrify Everything program.
Yeah, I think I saw that on their website. Yeah.
But we have not drawn on one.
Oh, we haven't spent in there. Okay.
No,
We've internally.
we provided financial assistance to a number of our members to the tune of about $600,000, $200,000 of which has already been repaid. And the remaining $400,000 is on-bill financing, so the member gets a
Discount
piece
on their
of
bill.
their
Yeah.
financial assistance to pay back every month for a period of 10 years.
Borrowing from RUS comes with relatively cumbersome compliance and regulatory requirements. And so what we're looking for right now is a specific agreement with RUS that allows us a different status, like a non-borrower status, because we went through the trouble of buying out of our RUS debt to, for the sake of those cumbersome requirements. And so this agreement would allow us to participate in the REST program without having all of those burdens on the co-op. So that's what we're fighting for right now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, the next, so you haven't had a chance Mike, to review all the policies, but on your iPad, there's the policies, and we go through the policies sort of on a regular schedule to update them. So now we're looking at D3, the conflicts of interest policy, which was last reviewed 2 years ago. And Levi's made a couple changes, I noticed. I read it, and these types of things make my eyes glaze over a little bit, but they are important. So have,
This is a blast for me. I loved it. I reviewed it, made one huge change announcement, just to bring some of the language up to 21st century statutorily used language. No substantive changes.
yeah, does anyone have any questions or suggested changes to this policy? Craig has a question.
Well, 2 or 3 board meetings ago, we had pretty big discussion about making, kind of more of a major change to the conflict policy, because this reads more of a financial conflict and a business conflict. And, I'm new to this a co-op conflict of interest policy, but, we've had some discomfort and we've spent a lot of time, for instance, when we had the decision about the request for the Granby Trails easement, and I'm on the advisory board of the land trust, and I felt uncomfortable, and this really doesn't address
to it at
that,
all.
and if it doesn't need to. So I don't know if we want to table, or we could approve this today, but have a discussion and separate attack on if we want to make a major change.
We
To have
want a different-
conflicts of school board, land trust board, this
Your
board,
boards,
you know, we all kind of help the community, so there's always something. And luckily, I abstained on the vote for that Granby Trails decision, which I felt comfortable with, but I was uncomfortable with how we got there. Because we
Right.
spent a lot of time at the meeting talking about if I could speak to the issue and da.
Well, so I think we should probably put that on the list of to-dos, is have that discussion, and maybe that's even a committee that really thinks about it rather than, I mean, the board's small, but at least if somebody could think about it and then present to the board some different ideas. Go ahead,
I
Justin.
think maybe in August, we have a fiduciary duty update from Levi. We'll have at least 3 new board members, so
Right,
if I has that down pat too. He loves doing it.
right.
And if this is kind of standard for the industry, then I'm fine with it. But if it's, you know, maybe that's a bit, see what other co-ops do for their conflict thing. So I'm not.
Raise good questions that I
Yeah.
would, I'd be happy to discuss with you in executive session or one-on-one.
Okay.
All right, so in the meantime, do we want to keep this policy in, I mean, it's in place until we change it.
I would recommend approving it as presented and then to the extent we revise it.
And then if we want to make big revisions in the future, we will do that.
I move to approve it, with minor revision.
D3.
As presented.
Second.
And Justin seconded, so we have a motion to approve policy D3 as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Policy D4, I'm not sure if this was up for revision, but I actually need some revisions because as the person who goes through per diems, there's a bit of gray area. And so this is more a philosophical question to the board, it's a policy question. Currently, there's a paragraph that says, and this has, Levi and I discussed this, it has to do with per diem. And it says, and it's under B, it's the big paragraph. It says, directors will be compensated for attendance at all board-approved functions. Then if you go to the end of that paragraph, which is kind of goes under C on the next page, at the very end, it says, provided that such director, excluding the president, has received prior authorization for attendance from the president or the board. So it's vague as to whether or not, if Mark Volt says, hey, there's a water energy nexus conference I want to go to, can I go, Liz? And will I get my per diem for those days? When I read this paragraph, it either has to be board approved or I could approve it. It could be read as that it's required for the board to approve that. So my question to the board is, do you want to approve all the functions that we go to, or do you want to leave it more vague so that the president can say, Mark, yeah, go ahead. Or if I'm not available, the board can say, yeah, Mark, go ahead. So there are some co-ops, I've seen YouTubes of this, where every month they go through a schedule and the co-op board votes and approves the directors going to various meetings. I think that's kind of cumbersome, but I want to throw that, I want to throw it out to you guys and see what you want to do.
Are you comfortable making that decision? I'm comfortable with you making that decision.
I think-
You're the standing board.
Well, I think the president should have I would hope have enough sense to make good decisions about that.
Make it less cumbersome.
Okay, so we would just, so as you rewrite that, you would just strike out that
So,
board approved,
and that be, it would just be directors would be compensated for attendance at all.
right? Yeah. But we're not going to vote on this today. I just wanted to get that guidance. There are a couple other changes that, well, one word that's going to get struck. But Levi looked at this and said the formatting's all wrong.
Yeah,
So,
formatting needs to be fixed. Yeah. So the board wants the president to approve attendance at meetings other than Parks Board
Right.
meetings. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that what we're?
Should we leave the and board in there?
yeah, leave the and
Yeah,
or, yeah.
You're not,
If
you're sure we
Yeah,
get
in
it.
case-
Right.
Okay.
I had some confusion on, since I'm newly named to the CREA board, if that was considered a board meeting for reimbursement at 500, even if the meeting's under 4 hours.
Right.
So as it stands now, it's a board meeting. I'm sure Carl with Tri-State and
Are you
Mark
driving or
with,
zooming?
well,
That was,
it's been
that's
both. It's been
the
both.
thing.
So that's the thing, but I don't know if
So-
it'd be easier to standardize it because in addition, say you attend by Zoom and it's 3 hours, you could drive at 6 hours. So it's 250 or 500, but you're also getting 300 emails each month because you're on the board. And I'm sure it's the same for Mark and Carl and
So
I.
what's different about CREA is Tri-State pays Carl's per diem for those meetings and
It's the only.
but and Western United is too. But yeah,
So it
I
is
hear you.
different.
So one thing I asked Levi to do was remove the word special in front of the 250 for special meetings at the end of that paragraph. Your point's well taken. It's a lot of work.
And I'm
Be on
fine
these
either way.
committees.
I'm fine either way. It's,
Okay.
You're almost devoting your day to that. Is that what we kind of looked at before?
Yeah. So, but
Even if it's 4 hours and it goes from 10 to 2.
the thing with CREA is it seems like they often have an afternoon meeting and then the next morning because they're thinking about people traveling. So it's really 2 days. And whether you Zoom or not.
Yeah.
And the last one was, more than that. It's that full day. You had a meeting up here though.
but that didn't count because that was just an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
But you had 4 hours of meetings that day between CREA and that meeting.
But I didn't put
Right,
that
I
on
know.
my
So-
meeting,
So that's always when I look at the per diem forms, I'm like, oh my God, I have to be consistent. The auditor wants me to be consistent. And we'll work on that,
Okay.
work on the CREA piece. The next policy, so Levi's going to make some changes on the policy D4. D6 is a replacement of directors, and this came up because of Jeff leaving. And we had a discussion last month about D6 and D7 and how they don't seem to they don't meet our needs completely. I asked Levi on D6 to see if he could craft something that addresses resignation. Because this really says replacement of directors, but the only thing it references are people who don't meet the qualifications anymore. It's not if someone had a health issue and needed to resign. So I asked him to add that in, and I believe we had a question about whether or not the notice, it just says we'll provide written notice of the vacancy. And in Jeff's case, we decided that posting it in the paper was enough, but we had that question as a board. And so I'm throwing it out to the board to see if you want that notice requirement defined better. Or are you good with leaving that the way it is? And Levi, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to do newspaper notice, I think it makes sense to specify that so it's clear that that would satisfy.
I agree.
Would that be proper legal notice?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any
Yeah.
legal requirements on how you provide notice of a vacancy.
Okay,
Because
so then we should probably clarify that in this policy, that it,
You want to go with newspaper?
I think it blankets it enough myself, but I know that we had questions if it does say to each member of the district. So I know that's where we were looking at, do we need to do a mailing or a ballot or a.
Yeah, so now I would just decide what do you want to do, and then we
Yeah.
can revise the policy. Because again, I'm not aware of a requirement outside of what your policy is. So you can.
so the question is, do we want to leave that to each, or can we just, or do we want to put in something that says publication in my local, whatever,
Within the district.
within the district?
And this just relates to that there is a vacancy,
Right,
not anything to do with the procedure for.
right, we're getting into the
replacement.
procedure, the
Yeah.
next,
Yeah.
I'm supportive of the public notice, which would be probably our newspaper and website. But I know there's concerns the other way too, Jared, or there was.
I'm good with that. Craig, anyone else have any thoughts? Can we give Levi that guidance that, Carl, are you okay rather than mailing something or mailing CCL to everybody about a vacancy, that it be noticed it in the paper and on our website?
I am. I think that's the appropriate way to go. I think the expense of mailing a letter to every member, and then if you leave somebody out or something happens, I think you're in trouble. So I think a notice in the paper is the appropriate way to go.
Okay, so we've got that, Levi, you've got that too.
that paper's plural.
Yeah,
So if it's down in my end, be the Gazette, up here be the Sky High News, or
right,
papers plural, and I don't know what they have in North Park for.
right.
So it would be a paper in the district of the vacancy.
Yeah.
So it'd be one paper.
Mhm.
Not plural.
Yes, where the district,
But I think,
with the east end or on the west end or up on.
Levi, I think the question that Mark's asking is who decides which paper? Because some of the areas are served by multiple newspapers, like Kremling gets the Gazette and the.
Yeah, you're the deciders on this, so you tell me.
Well,
Local newspapers.
All.
That leaves it open, because
yeah,
by the time it comes up again, paper.
Do you want to leave it open, or do you want to say it has to be in all of them?
I have,
In the district.
I have seen language before that says appropriate, local newspaper, appropriate. Yeah, I mean, because it would change based on,
right. And we have to think of this over time too.
Mhm, right.
What do newspapers look like 5 years from now?
In some districts.
So, like,
right, it's
state
too.
notice publication requirements for the government typically say in a newspaper published in the
Right, yeah.
your district.
That would be a good way to
If you
cover it.
want 'em, yeah, so that's what I was anticipating for this.
I think that'd be hard.
One newspaper?
Yeah, like, I think if Mark's vacancy came up,
We'd want it in both.
or we want it in both. I think because, like, I think from the governmental perspective, the Middle Park Times, or whatever it is now, the Sky High,
Okay.
is the paper of record. But I don't think that it's the paper that's read the most.
No, and I think because we got Sky High News and Grand Gazette, it used to be the Middle Park Times with the paper of record for the conservation district.
Right.
And then is this also social media? People are more and more.
I'm sorry, Levi.
Appropriate, the best word.
I think you need a board policy committee.
Okay, well, that's a good idea, and we'll work on that. Okay. Are you guys good with, could we put appropriate paper?
So I'll give you, yeah. so
And then an
Virginia's
S
like-
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
put an S.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, yeah, because there might not be appropriate.
there might not be.
Mark has like 200 members in Summit County.
Right, so it might
Sometimes
be
they'll think
that.
it's one.
Okay. These next ones should be much easier, Rob. Date of record for voting in director elections, April 3rd, 2023, which is 40 days before the May 13th. meeting.
We're gonna go D7.
7.
Oh, I did, shoot. Okay, this is the director search and selection policy, and as we learned last time around, it doesn't have any sort of reference to notice in it. And if you read 6, you will know you need to notice it, but if you read 7, you don't know. So the question is, there was a discussion last month, about putting notice requirement in policy D7. And maybe we put a similar, the same thing that we just put in D6. I mean, it's essentially the same. It's continuation of that process.
Yeah, because this really says the board appoints and
Appoints a committee.
Committees,
and-
yeah.
what we did was we advertised it,
Right,
the opening.
right,
Seems more appropriate.
right. So could we put a similar notice, I mean, essentially the same as we put in policy D6 and D7?
We could. And the other issue with D7 was that the process that it talks about in my time that I've been here has never been followed.
Yeah.
So
Because it says it may be followed.
it says may, so that's okay. It just,
So maybe we should, okay, so the policy committee will work on this policy so that it's more user-friendly to the board. But in the meantime, do we want to
and I do think the D6 notice, it does
cover it?
cover it.
Okay, all right. So this one, I'm going to edit and,
So in reality, you could have a notice in the paper of the vacancy and also ask for potential candidates and cover
right,
both bases at the same time.
right.
Yeah.
What if you don't find somebody?
Just keep looking.
Until there's an election.
So
If there's no election, you still don't have anybody.
I mean,
So-
Yep, it could, absolutely.
I think we took a while to find Mark. I think like, that seat stayed open for a little bit.
Yeah. They even dug to the bottom of the barrel on me.
No, I think.
There's a few candidates and somebody backed out.
Pardon?
I think there's a lady that just backed out and didn't consider it anymore.
Yep, she realized that the only way you could get off the board was the D6, which meant you had to move or not show up to meetings or.
Yeah, they have to die or find your own replacement.
Okay, date of record for voting in the director election.
So this goes back to the notice, we're required to give notice to our members of the meeting and, then I believe, 40 days before, so the date of record, I suggested should be the same as the notice date for the.
So the bylaw specifically said, yeah, just. I'm saying. Bylaws say the note, the date of record for notice is 40 days, but that doesn't cover the date of record for voting, which is not covered by the bylaw, so you have to do a motion, and it makes sense to do it on the same day. Oh, and to Mark's earlier point, I think we should put in the motion, this will be the date of record for the election, including any
Special elections.
special runoffs, yeah.
And date of record for Mike's sake.
Yes,
That is the date by which somebody has to be a member in order to
Oh, okay.
participate in the election. So anybody who joins the co-op 2 days after that date would not receive a ballot.
So if when you vote, you get a ballot in the mail?
Right.
Really? Okay.
And the state requires that we set a date of record.
So everybody gets one.
well, all the members.
All
All
the
the
members
members, yeah.
who were members as of this date.
So like if it's two people,
In that-
do they get 2 votes? Or is it
No.
just one
It's
person
one
who's ever on the
vote
bill?
per
One vote per
member, and-
membership.
Yeah, and, well, Levi will answer that later.
And it costs us about $15,000.
Wow.
And, yeah.
I'll move for those 2 conditions that we just talked
Okay,
about,
so
the 2
Cray
dates.
has moved that April 3rd, 2023 be the date of record for voting in the 2023 director election and
And
any special election runoff thereafter. Is there a second? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are we also then tying both of those to the 40 days with this?
That's what this is.
Okay.
That's 40 days.
Going forward, always 40 days, so
Well,
No, just-
because of how it's set up, you'll have to do this
every year.
motion every year.
Here.
Must be by some bylaws.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Carl, are you opposed or are you in favor?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. There was a lag. Motion carries. Okay. Rob, do you want to explain the election supervisory committee?
So we're required to have 3 on the committee. They must be members not in the districts where the elections are taking place. So what we do is we come up with 3 and then we have 3 alternates. There was a question last year about the experience of those on the committees. Had they done this before? So the 3 that are proposed to be on the committee have all done this before, and 2 of the 3 alternates have. Their task is really quite simple. So they get together and they, the day before the annual meeting, and they look over the questionable ballots that were received in the mail. And so that's done in the community room with either Levi or Bryson. If they have questions about candidates can observe as well. And so typically we see, I don't know, 25 to 40 questionable ballots that they go over. And this could be anything from ballots with no signatures, or there's a signature that doesn't appear to be the name on the account. It's those kinds of issues that they resolve. And then as a committee, they decide which ones to count and which ones not to count. The day of the annual meeting, their task is to observe the registration table to make sure everything's done as it should be. When people show up for the annual meeting that have not voted by mail, they receive a floor ballot and they observe that process. We've opened breakfast at 8 o'clock. The meeting starts at 9:15. Registration closes at 10 minutes after that. So there's someone on that committee observing the registration table for that entire time. And then their final task is really during the meeting itself. Those that vote with the floor ballot, employees collect those in buckets and walk them back to the mail ballot vendor who counts the votes through the machine. And the election supervisory committee observes that entire process. And so that is the sum of their task. So today we're just putting this up. You need to approve the supervisory committee. I've listed all the references to the bylaws and the policies about their tasks in the motion. So if there are any questions, I am thrilled to answer them.
Any questions?
Good job, Rob.
I need a motion for these to approve the election supervisory committee.
So moved.
Go
Second.
ahead. All in favor?
Aye.
I just want to express my gratitude for our members who are stepping up to be on these committees and show up and do this, because we couldn't have elections if they weren't willing, and without elections, there'd be no board. It's part of the co-op way of life, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for.
Is it a bit tough to find these members, Rob?
You know what? We've had good fortune. It's not as hard as you might think it is. The people that do it and do it once, they tend to have time. They have ties to the community, interest in it. And I'll just say Mountain Parks just has such a good reputation for many years that a lot of these people are really happy to help us. We do give them a small thank you for their work on this, but I don't have a hard time finding them. My challenge sometimes is it's easier for people in the Granby area to do this. So if we have elections in Granby, that gets a little harder because they have to have people on the committee outside of that area to come to our meetings. So, but so far, knock on wood, it hasn't been.
Good job.
Okay,
This,
go ahead.
just,
Oh.
wanted to let the board know,
Oh,
the
that's
fine
right.
work that Rob has done on all of these things,
Mhm.
that this will in fact be his last board meeting.
Thank you, Mark. I thought we all knew that, so I didn't. Say.
We were gonna have a surprise for you later. Oh, yeah, I've,
It's a chain, so.
it's possible I'll start.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine elections and all of these things that have been so closely intertwined with, when I think about an election at Mountain Parks, your face pops up. So, yeah, it's hard to imagine having an election with potentially 4 candidates this spring and not seeing your face, knowing it's going to be elsewhere.
I'll say this, by that time, we should know who all the candidates are, and we will have everything turned into the mail ballot vendor before I leave. I'll have detailed plans of the steps that follow and the things that need to be done, but really, the committee's lined up. I think we're in good shape for this election, and Virginia said we'll come up with some recommendations for the runoff, and that will go like butter, I'm sure.
Without your grimaced face.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Okay, so as you all know, we've been getting a lot of requests to the education and community funds. And so I was going to put together a committee, but then I kept thinking by the time we get the committee working on it, we will have spent hours and hours in these board meetings talking about these things. So I wanted to throw this out as a first start, get some ideas of what you guys are thinking. Have you had a chance to look at it, review it? Any thoughts on establishing some guidelines? Only thinking about these things 3 times a year. A minimum amount that they would ask for. Do these things seem reasonable?
So what's the charitable trust? That like a separate?
It is. So the charitable trust is the roundup money. So people have the option on their bill to round up to the next highest dollar. And that money goes to the charitable trust, and they.
The charitable trust is like separate.
It's set in some way, well, Levi can speak to the legal aspects of it. This board appoints the board of the charitable trust.
And again, what's their annual?
It's like 60,000, 60, 70,000.
6,000.
So it's quite a big difference from. To the education fund.
Yeah.
Okay. So they should do little requests.
Yeah, they do little requests, a chunk of their money. So the Mountain Family Center, which is based in Granby, does a lot of the sort of social service aspects in the community, and they're very in touch with the folks who have challenges, needs that need to be met. And so originally, the charitable trust was trying to vet those requests. Someone has emergency dental work that he made, or all of this stuff. And it was very different. And Mountain Family was doing the same thing, sort of. And so now the charitable trust gives money to Mountain Family, and they handle those things. And then they have some left over for some of the other issues. We also, from the Educational Trust Fund, give them $20,000 a year to administer for some of the smaller requests they might get from schools. That's been in place for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, do you think, Justin?
We upped it to 20,000, yeah, not even that long, probably.
Okay, yeah. I was trying to think of like when the last time we increased that amount was and whether we ought to. So that's the idea behind this discussion.
The other small, I mean, not small, but the other portion of money is we give money to our general manager to disperse with requests like that so that, you know, we're not fielding those necessarily all the time, but, you know, they're the ones involved with that decision. And how much is that?
It's 15,000.
It's 0.5% of something. There's a policy, it's under the contributions policy. And that is, it's a percentage of our non-power, the operating budget that's not the power. Go ahead, Chris.
Just a point of clarification, months ago, when we were approached and approved like $600 for the soccer jerseys, I think.
T-shirt, yeah.
How come? Was it the nature of the ask that it came to us rather than the committee already in place?
It was the nature of the request. The requester can fill out the form and submit it to the charitable trust. They can also submit it directly to the board. And what I have done is, since there are not guidelines in place, if someone submits it and asks for board consideration of it, then it comes to the board. And that one was, and you recall I think it was the coach came in and actually presented.
Yeah, and it was a great cause. I'm wondering if that's the type of thing we want to
Right.
kind of streamline. I
Exactly.
think these proposed items in the draft are great. My only worry would be if somehow somebody had a need and the timing didn't work out, you know, on this, you know.
You mean like
several-
if there was a pandemic all of a sudden and no one could pay their energy bills? Like something like that?
Yeah, that'd be my only concern. But if you make a little exception rule, then it takes away.
Right, I would prefer that we put it in place without an exception rule and then the AR guidelines.
Yeah. But this is only for the under 5,000.
Well, that's the question to you guys.
Yeah.
Is the 5,000 the right amount
Then the board would only be considering request 5,000 or
or
greater.
greater?
Anything below that
Is
would
that the
be.
right cutoff?
And any below would go to the charitable trust.
Right.
That sounds reasonable.
We talked about giving more to the charitable trust.
Yeah.
I tried to attend
Right, they haven't had a meeting.
3 times this month.
So do you guys feel good that 5,000 is the proper cutoff?
Like that amount.
Okay,
So things, just sorry to interrupt,
Go.
but things like the Middle Park High School chargers, electric bus thing,
that would come
that's
to us.
evolving
Right.
quickly, that would be separate from this. That would still be under
Yeah,
our,
you know, I think I put in here that later, or do we want to be going out and looking for projects that meet sort of strategic needs that we think are important and fit them into something like this? I don't know, Cray, I feel like we have enough, this would maybe give us enough leeway so that we could do, these are for requests.
yeah.
We kind of went away from a policy like this about, remember we had
You know,
we'd all show up, they'd all come in the same.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was, you know, we
Right.
got into, they were just trying to fill budgets with
Right.
more,
right,
I mean,
So-
completely random, like we wanted to
Yeah.
go to the
right, I agree.
technology department.
Right, this was trying to sort of straddle that really formal, everyone come in once a year and give us your laundry list, to being able to put this on the website. If they have a request, they go do a Survey Monkey doc or whatever. All of that gets put together and we look at it 3 times a year. And we're not out beating the drum like, hey, you have to, here comes the deadline, you have to apply. It's on their initiative if they want to do it.
If I may, just from my past experience with similar issue at DMEA, we had a lot of requests that came monthly to the board, quite a number, and they took a long time to discuss, and some of them were very small, some of them were very large. We did move to a plan very similar to this. It was 2 times a year that the board would consider requests. They had to be over $10,000. Anything under $10,000 up to a certain amount, I think it was $75,000 a year, was determined by the general manager or the operation roundup, or they were directed to operation roundup, depending on the request. It cleaned up the process a lot. And then the board was looking at ones that, 10,000 or more, you're really talking about major community projects. You're talking about the things that make the biggest impact on the community and that were most important to the board. And it certainly, it was a very nice streamlined process. So I think these recommendations are good. I think they would help you guys.
How long was it in place, Virginia?
How long?
Yeah, once they passed it,
I would-
a year or two?
Yeah, I would say it was in place while I was there, probably 5 years.
And it worked good?
Oh, yeah, it did. It actually.
That's my question. Let's not reinvent if it worked good there.
Because there were other ways for people to get funding, right? Because the general manager could approve requests up to a certain amount annually. So if something came in emergency wise that needed to be dealt with, there were, it worked well.
Okay, good.
Did you guys have a question? Go ahead, Craig.
On the application questions,
Yeah.
I think we could maybe streamline that.
Okay, I was trying to
I
make
think
it a
it's
little.
pretty lengthy.
I was trying to make it harder, Craig.
Most of them are answered just in the name of the applicant and description of the project. So I think we could, for like soccer jerseys, I think.
Well,
That's pretty lengthy,
the
but-
soccer jerseys wouldn't come through this unless it was.
A lot of
Oh,
them.
this is the over 5,000?
Yeah.
This is the over.
Oh, okay, well then maybe
What'd
that's,
you say,
I
Jeff?
liked it more in depth because we used to field those ones where it's like, you have no idea what you're asking for. So then we'd have to have them come in the next meeting.
The staff would have to talk to them and try to nail it down and.
I withdraw my comment because I thought it was the 105,000.
No, this
So
is the over
this is fine.
5,000.
Yeah, okay.
And then I didn't include whether or not we want any reporting from them. I mean, do we want a question that says they'll commit to reporting on how they use that? But we can have staff sort of take a look at this and think about.
We did have the time we gave it to them and
Yeah, they use it for things that we
did
didn't.
different things and it was quite a large sum. I mean, 15 or 20,000.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
We went a different direction.
It also puts them in there where they agree to participate in any social media
Yeah.
or communications that we want to do after it to show.
Okay, so in the interest of time, are you guys okay with the general guidelines the way they are? And then staff can work on sort of cleaning up the language and the questions, and then we'll try to get this put in place in the next. Okay.
Here's one question on the, let's take our early education, preschools and things like that.
Right.
So they would be at the mercy of these dates basically, or are we going to try to streamline all that into one as we have been doing?
Right.
I mean, if
Right
we
now-
set up one sort of request date or.
Right now we have, we've committed to them for multiple years. And so I don't think they would have to re-request until that multiple years. I can't remember what we did, 2 or 3 years, I think. 3? And so we have them come in on 2 years from now, tell us how they're doing. I would actually think that we would want to invite them to come talk to the board. And then they could go through this. And if they'll just have to plan knowing that, these are the deadlines. They know they want the funds. They need to put it in November to get it in whenever. Would that work?
That works.
But I also think we funded what was the thing that Darcy did with the parenting? Last year, there was a parenting grant.
Parenting plus.
Yeah, so it's something about your students, I think we need to reach out to organizations that are providing those services and letting them know, and let them know there's this change. And anything else? All right, should we take a break? Or we want to move right along? into strategic planning. Finish this. Strategic planning. You all got a survey in your email? Thumbs down. Did you see it, Mark?
I haven't got it. I'm not sure. I don't think I reviewed it.
Okay. It was sent on the 6th. I think it was sent on the 6th, and it came from, I'd have to go back and look, but it talks about strategic planning, and there's a survey in there that they need back by March 21st. So,
Leslie Everett.
yeah, Leslie.
I just deleted
You
that.
figured that was a no before thing.
Yep.
Yeah. You must not have seen my email saying that you're gonna get an email.
We'll look at it.
Okay.
I will.
So.
Promise.
So please complete that survey or you'll get a call from me asking you to complete the survey. But anyway, the strategic planning will be April 18th and 19th, probably either at River Run or the Y. CFC is doing it. They will take the information that you provide on the survey to get us jump started, the strategic planning process. On the agenda, it does not say this, but I would love it if the board was able to have dinner together on the 18th, if Levi will allow that.
Why wouldn't I?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Am I invited?
I think you may be invited.
Not to the,
Not to the
meeting. After,
To the
I
bar.
think we talked about
Yeah.
that being there, right?
Yeah.
In person. Since it's a 2-day deal, so my fee arrangement for 2 special meetings is a flat travel fee. Since it's a 2-day meeting, what I think makes sense to me is 1 travel fee plus the room and board expenses.
You can,
Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense, and you
Okay.
can work that out with Virginia.
Where you stand.
If it's a run, it's by state.
If you buy beer.
It's Drowsy
If there,
Water.
I don't think there's a Ritz, so I guess I'll have to.
You might be staying at Drowsy Water. So, also Tiffany, I think, or we will upload the current strategic plan to call to order, so you have that. There's a summary of it on the website. It's a little hard to find, but you can find it if you look, but the one that she has is a little more complete. Our next, so is there any questions about the strategic planning session? Okay. Tri-state delegates. Mark was on time, so we didn't get to appoint him as the tri-state delegate. But Kristen's not here. You're going
I will
as
be
well.
there, yes.
Okay, so we need to appoint delegates to the tri-state annual meeting. Generally, Mountain Parks has not appointed the tri-state director as a delegate. So we try to keep those two duties separate. The meeting is April 4th and 5th. Virginia, do you want to be the delegate?
I'm happy. I'm
Okay.
happy to do that.
And
You're
then.
attend anyway.
Yes, I'm going to attend.
And we can have Kristen expressed an interest. She could be the alternate delegate. So if I could have a motion to approve Virginia as the delegate and Kristen as the alternate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Did just get an update that the strategic plan is now on call to order. It's in the board documents.
Okay, thanks. So you press the
Press this
little,
little
the little house here.
Oh, okay.
Should press the little house. Yeah, and then it's gonna stuff.
Oh, cool.
So that motion passed, Levi. We have our delegates. I brought the form actually, so we can fill that out.
Virginia, what just got?
The strategic plan from previous years,
Oh, okay.
or previous year.
Thank you. Under the strategic planning.
In the board documents, I think.
Oh, okay. Board.
So-
Oh, in the board documents.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yep,
so you
yep.
have
Oh,
to
I see.
go-
Okay,
yeah.
so you go over here.
To the next.
Okay. Okay. Let's stop now and take about a 15-minute break, and we'll come back and handle the next items.
We're right there.
Yes.
So, explain to me this.
Okay. Oh, okay. So the per diem thing is under policy. So you didn't know this. Not only are you never allowed to resign from your seat, but you get paid $500.
Oh, okay.
And I'll go through, there's a way for you to fill out. So as,
Okay, that's right. I just want to make sure.
So I have to fill out something?
yeah, there's this little spreadsheet. I'm not sure if they put yours up yet.
Okay.
And you put it's a monthly one, it's on Excel, and you put you attended. And then you sign it electronically.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I review it, and then I send it to the payroll.
Oh,
And then they will cut you a check and make an automatic deposit.
So it's is it like, do you get taxed on it?
It's gonna be, it's a 1099 non-employment. If it's gonna ruin your taxes,
Didn't want to. Okay.
Let's get back to the task at hand. We skipped over the minutes of the previous meetings. Has everyone reviewed the minutes and does anyone have any questions on the minutes?
Were there any amendments from when we first looked at them?
On the minutes?
No. Okay.
No. There are no amendments. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as
Is there a
presented.
second?
Okay.
All in favor of approving the minutes, February board meeting minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. Okay, now we're going to go down to the ratification of some of the actions we took in the February meeting. The first one is the deferred revenue that we questioned that way.
And you may notice, if you looked at the minutes,
1 million.
that it was 1 million and staff deferred 1.5 million. In the discussion that the board had, the board's intent was to have a balance of $2.5 million in deferred revenue. So if we had a balance at the time, the board considered that of 1.5, so deferring an additional million would get you to 2.5. We have a schedule that we have to recognize a certain percentage of the deferred revenue every year. And so before we closed the books in 22, we had to recognize $500,000. So in order to get the deferred revenue balance to the 2.5 that the board had discussed, we deferred $1.5 million instead of $1 million. And I will answer any questions you may have.
So, Justin, you have questions?
No, I noticed, I mean, I knew
Yeah.
1 million, but
Right, but
That's what
you
I was
understood
wondering if we
that,
had-
you understood sort of our intent.
So what do you do with that?
So what we're going to do is we're going to ratify the staff's action to defer $1.5 million.
Are you asking what we do with the deferred?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
What is the purpose of this?
The purpose of this is that in the event there was a bad year
Yeah,
or
you're
The
deferring it
tri-state-
from what? though?
So
Like-
we're allowed, so we can recognize this revenue, say, the revenue that was I shouldn't be the one explaining this.
Yeah.
In 2022, we have this revenue, we can recognize it in 2023 should something go south. For
Okay.
example, we have a increase, Tri-State increases their power bill halfway
Yeah,
through the
so
year.
it's just like
or-
reserves or.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or there's economic downturn or, something.
And so whatever deferred revenue that we have set aside, we also set aside the cash associated with that deferred revenue.
Okay.
It helps you weather all kinds of events,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's an unexpected power supply increase or a major problem at a significant piece of equipment that has to be changed out that you were not planning for. It's helpful to.
Okay. I mean, is that enough? I mean, it doesn't sound like a whole lot of money.
It's quite a bit.
Okay.
I mean,
Yes.
Okay.
The board discussion last month was that we have projected in the budget a margin for 2023 of $1.8 million.
Okay.
And by bringing the deferred revenue balance to 2.5 million, you add those two together, we would have had to have made a horrific mistake in the budget or had something happen that we had not anticipated to be able to go through the 4.3. So the margin that is budgeted plus the 2.5 to get to a point where the co-op would be financially in trouble straits.
Okay. All right. Good.
and we have ratios that are tied to our loans that we have to meet.
Okay.
And so that's sort of where we need to meet that. So this gives us some protection.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so we need a motion to ratify the staff's action to defer $1.5 million. If someone would make that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any, any opposed? Thanks, Carl. Last meeting, Todd Budin came in and talked, well, was on Zoom and talked about the Energy Smart and the CARE program. There was a motion to award the CARE program $20,000 and the energy audit $8,000. So that's a rebate structure that will administer, Mountain Parks will administer. So we need that ratified. And in addition, Levi, can I take both of these together or you want?
Energy Smart and CARES?
Yeah, well, I was going to do the revision to the general.
No, I need to.
Okay. So I need a vote to ratify that.
Make that motion to ratify.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thanks, Carl. All right, all in favor to ratify the Energy Smart CARES? Motion passes.
Aye.
Ratification of revisions to the GM agreement. You voted by email for a few minor changes to that agreement. And I just need ratification of that email. So
Let's
how do you want to do that?
do executive session later,
Okay,
ratify after executive
Okay.
session.
okay,
That works?
that sounds good. Operations and engineering report. We're through this.
All right, good morning, everybody. You have my slides in front of you. Got a couple highlights that I wanted to bring up that aren't in there. We're seeing a ton of plat reviews come in. Plat reviews are for like new subdivisions, or they're building out subdivisions. We're probably seeing over twice, double what we normally see. So what that means, if all this new construction comes to fruition, it's going to be a very, very busy construction season. And it's just, it's stuff that we're thinking of, trying to plan for, get ready for. But in the words of Jean, who looks at this, she's never seen so many coming in. So that's just interesting. And we're trying to get prepared for it. We're now seeing really long times on wire, and not just one specific kind of wire. The primary wire, the secondary wire is similar to what we are still seeing on transformers. We are really well supplied in our warehouse, but as I just brought up, with all this new construction coming in, that's just another concern coming up this summer that we're going to have to be aware of and work through with our members going forward. We're also working with metering a lot right now. We have a bunch of batteries in our collectors that are failing. They're just kind of right at that age. They're 3 to 5 year old batteries, and it's playing havoc on just. We've had a few outages where the outages looked a lot bigger than it actually is, and then people are seeing that on Smart Hub and whatnot, and they're really actually not out of power. For instance, we had one up in Grand Lake in January, I believe. It said there was like 1,000 people out of power. It was actually only 400 were out of power. And then even in Walden, just a week or so ago, it only said 19 people were out of power, and there were actually 400 people out of power. So we're working as fast as we can to replace these batteries. But in case anybody questions you on anything like that, it's batteries don't like cold weather. This winter's been cold, and they're going to get to the end of their life, and we're working on changing them out. That is playing a little bit of havoc with some of our AMI metering right now. We got a meeting with Connexon next week. We're just starting to thinking about building back up and trying to finish our fiber backbone. They were hoping to maybe start construction back the end of March. Just looking at the snow out there, we'll be lucky to get started into April. More like probably May would be my guess. So that's exciting. I'm exciting to get them back in here and finish that up. We've went over this before. There's probably a couple months of work, kind of finishing up some splices and some road crossings. There's also some equipment that we're still waiting on getting in to get connected to get this backbone completed. My goal is by the end of the summer that we have a good functioning fiber backbone to all of our substation and offices. Mark touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. FEMA, we did get some really good news on the Highway 125 project. The scope change did get approved, and it took, I was just looking back, looks like we submitted that in October of last year, so we're going on 5 months that took to get approved. I bring that up because we're in the process of getting the scope change for Trail Creek right now, and it still hasn't actually been submitted to FEMA. We're still working with the state to get exactly the way they want it before they submit it to FEMA. So we're probably at least 4 to 5 months away from getting the scope change for Trail Creek approved. We are making progress. I've had a couple conversations. It's not going to affect the start of that job whatsoever. We'll still be able to start submitting expenses, under the original scope that we submitted to them. And I would guess that before we're done with that job, the scope change will get completed. So those are some things. It's just got to look a certain way for FEMA to approve it. And it's a lot of work, and a lot of people have been working on that, trying to get it to that point. And with that, I think those are the couple things I wanted to bring up. Does anybody got any questions about my report?
You feel confident with your employee that went to the fiber training to be able to splice?
They already are splicing. Yes, and we got a state-of-the-art fiber splicer. We're trying to get more employees. A lot of you in here know Mitch Hawker. He's a very good at splicing. Sean is our other substation tech, and just trying to get him kind of trained up and caught up with Mitch. So we've probably got 2 good people that can splice fiber, and we're going to continue to try to get more of the linemen that are able to work on the fiber. It's bound to happen. We're going to get a car versus a puller or something like that, and we're going to splice fiber, and there won't be a fiber contractor up here to help fix it. So
How can it be?
but yeah, it was a good training, and you should be able to fix it.
The new hire for the GIS, did that end up being on-site or remote or mixed?
We did a hybrid with her. So she comes up 2 days a week, and then she works at home 2 days a week. And that's actually a pretty similar schedule to the GIS person, Heather, that's already working here. So it seems, it's nice to have her come in, and, we're building that relationship, and I think it's been working pretty well.
Thanks, Adam.
I guess just talking about new employees, we had, I did put in there, we had a new fleet mechanic start, Cody, and then real excited about him. We've had, unfortunately, we lost Nathan Parker in our Walden office, but we are, I think we got some good candidates that we're interviewing for that job. Hopefully we'll have some good news in the near future on the job offer up there. And we have had more activity for the open staff engineer position. So I'm going to cross my fingers and be real hopeful that we're going to get that position filled in the near future also.
So you talked about the batteries and what Smart Hub was reading versus reality. Does that change the safety, all those numbers?
So Leah goes back in there and she's fixing that. When me figure out exactly what was off. And she spent a lot of time
I bet.
straightening that out. But yeah, it's led to a lot of phone calls with our members. You know, the one couple of the members call us, well, it looks like my house was out of power for 12 hours.
Yeah, and they're down somewhere
They're
else.
down in, it's a second home and they never were out of power. So it's caused some confusion. I think it's something we learned. We need to probably get a better maintenance plan for changing out these batteries. So that's just part of learning the new smart meters and whatnot. But yeah, we're gonna get it fixed and it's gonna get better. But you know, we've had a few months here of just some confusing things the Smart Hub has put out there because of these collector batteries being bad, basically.
Are they like they're not hardwired in at all? It's completely battery based.
Well, so when the power's on, the collector's working, right?
Yep.
But eventually the battery's gonna die.
Even if it's never used. So.
Yeah, it's not gonna communicate correctly.
What's the life on batteries? 2 years?
It's 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5.
Yeah, and we're at almost 5 years.
Okay, yeah. Justin, it's similar to your smoke lamp in your house.
Yeah.
What kind of batteries are they?
You know, I don't know.
A specialty battery or are they just commercial?
It's like a commercial.
Yeah, they are commercial batteries.
Yeah. I mean, they're good batteries, but yeah, I mean, we all know even the electric cars and whatnot, cold weather affects stuff. So it doesn't surprise me we're having more trouble right now than maybe like in July or August or something like that. So we'll probably try to get on like a 3-year rotation plan for these batteries moving forward. But right now they all need changed out.
How many collectors are there in the system?
About 600. Yep, and we've probably changed out a third of those already. Hopefully before construction season we get real busy again, we'll get them all changed out is the plan.
Trying to rev it running.
Summer intern opportunities.
Some are. It's definitely good apprentice work and, you know,
Yeah.
we're actually working it in, you guys saw we're doing a lot of line patrol. So as the guys are doing the line patrol, they're changing them out as they're going around. We've also been utilizing in App Suite, NISC, these new inspection forms. So we basically put every collector on the map, and then as the guys complete the task, it turns from green to red. So it's a good way to do it, and eventually the whole screen will be red. But it's pretty neat, the new software, how we're able to use that now, whereas before we might have given the guys a paper map or something like that, and now we're able to use inspections on here, and it's all digital, and it's something we'll be able to track. And you know, next time we need to do it or do it in phases, it'll be digital and be ready to go.
It's amazing, it's been 5 years.
Yes.
Feels like 20 or a year, I don't know.
It seems like it was longer for me, honestly. Yeah.
That's about probably 10 years since you started, since the co-op started talking about it.
Yeah.
Adam, since ops and engineering have been combined, what's your take now that we're however many months out?
But my take is, you know, we were actually just talking about this yesterday. We've never really improved our communication between departments. In the past, there's been a little bit of just clashing, just a little bit, because you got differences of opinions or whatnot. Not in a bad way, just there's two different departments. And now that it's one department, it seems like we got one collective goal. I think that's why you're seeing some of the good new processes coming out of ops and engineering. You know, we're trying to think of what works best for both departments and for all of mountain parks. I think there's just more seamless processes going on. So I think it's good stuff that's coming out of ops and engineering. So far, I think it's working well. We do need to fill that staff engineer position because that is, if anything, you got to have the right tools in the tool bag to make everything work, and that is a concern until we have that position filled. But I really like the way the communication and just kind of the collective team mindset that we got going on.
Any other questions?
Liz,
Yes,
yeah,
Carl?
Liz, I'd like to ask Virginia about the question that was just asked. What has been your experience in the past of combining or separating these two departments? And if we do hire a staff engineer, will they be separated again?
Yeah, so we did, and Adam and I did just talk about this yesterday. We actually talked about it a couple times since I've been here. Ideally, I like the idea of having a manager of engineering and a manager of operations. I think that engineering is a very specialized trade, right? It's a very specialized skill, and to have somebody with that level of expertise at the helm of that department, I think is pretty important. One of the benefits to combining them, the way that we have here at Mountain Parks, is that you do get that better cooperation between engineering and operations. That is a very common point of headbutting, is between those two departments, because you can have an engineering philosophy that is great in the engineering world, but it doesn't work well in practice in the field. And so you get these clashes between that ops manager and the engineering manager. One of the things that, that we did actually at DMEA was put those two departments together under me. So I provided that kind of, hey, we're all going to come together and work together towards a common goal. And I think that did help make those two departments work better together. So I understand why Adam being in that role here should help cause, bridge the gap between those two departments. My concern now is that the staff engineer position may not be a high enough level position to attract a well-qualified engineer to come to this area. And we need one, right? I mean, we need that for attrition planning, and we just also need it based on the staffing levels that we have right now. So Adam and Angie and I have been talking about some potentially creative ways to tweak that, and maybe actually be looking for a different position rather than staff engineer, still only one position, but might be tweaked a little bit to attract a higher level of experience type of engineer. So I do think that there's a little bit of a risk there in the way that we have it established, but I agree with Adam in that it helps create just a sense of working together between those two departments to have it under one person. But it could go either way. So we'll see how it works out long term, and whether or not we have a qualified enough engineer here to help lead that group under Adam.
Carl and both Carl and Craig, I think, as a board, we're concerned about these issues. But I will remind everyone that it's up to the general manager to decide the organizational structure of Mountain Parks. And so we may want to have these discussions, but ultimately it falls on whoever's the GM to organize this. And certainly we can express our concerns.
Well, Liz, to comment on that, I agree with what Mark did under the circumstances that Mountain Parks had faced at the time. But I agree with Virginia that I think they need to be two separate departments because they have different motives in mind. If there's a way to have somebody else involved to coordinate so that there's not a headbutting issue between the two departments, I agree. And I think, thank you, Virginia, for your opinion.
Any more questions about operations and engineering? And I find the number of plats coming in
Scary.
a little bit, concerning. Not just from a Mountain Parks elective perspective and supply chain issues, but from grocery store perspectives and things like that. Traffic.
So through the county preliminary plat approval, they asked for Mountain Parks input at that time from the county subdivision.
Did they change something? Is that why we're seeing more?
So county and towns, and we're just part of the
Review process.
We got to make sure that they have enough room for our facilities to go in. And, as we've talked before, they're building out these lots so tightly that it's really important to make make sure they have room for our utilities, or they'll push something through. So we really try to get a look at what they're gonna build and get our voice in, hey, that's not gonna work. You're not leaving enough room for us to meter anywhere on the property, or there's no room for our electric lines. So it's really important to have a look at these plats before the town or city or county approves them, or they won't give us enough room.
At the time to change.
And then we'll be the bad guy because we'll say, we can't serve you because you didn't leave any room for us. So it's a lot of work from Gene because they may or may not happen also. You know, we're seeing twice as many plats as normal, but maybe only a quarter of them will happen. You know, they might start seeing the way materials are going and whatnot, and they just won't even do them. Or the way things are going, if it, the last couple of years are an indication, they might all go through. Like we've been building, like crazy the last couple of years. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it is an indicator that you look at in engineering of saying this could happen, and we need to make sure we're ready for it.
Do we have enough staff to do that? That's kind of unforeseen deal. It's one person, Gene's doing them.
Yeah, so we're
Just curious.
getting Jean some help. She's using some outside consultants to help do this. It's the problem is, it does ultimately fall on Mountain Parks to look at this, and we do have some people that can back up Jean in Mountain Parks. So it's kind of a collective effort. And then, as far as if the work actually happens, it'll be an effort of probably we wouldn't have enough staff. We would end up contracting a lot of this work out to get it done.
Yeah, and I would agree with contracting, as a lot of that work, because sometimes these boom periods only last for a short period of time. So staffing up for a growth boom is not always the best idea. Wait and see whether or not it's sustainable. And then also with a short construction season, if you staff up to handle the summer work, then you're overstaffed in the winter. So you have to, really balance the use of contractors versus employee count. But yeah, I would say right now, if all those plats get built, we would not have sufficient staff to build them out. We would need to use some contractors.
I think that's great. The county, I know, because conservation district will do them also, and it's just our opinion. It's the time to make something happen, make the developer change at that preliminary plat, rather than it goes all the way through and then they have to change. No, that's not right. Good. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, we've seen Mark when for instance, maybe we didn't look at something good enough. We'll deal with those ramifications for years to come. There's a couple subdivisions that we still. Maybe we normally ask for 10 feet and somehow we missed it. We got a 5-foot easement in those subdivisions. Like we're still dealing with issues in those subdivisions almost on every job. So it's really make sure we review the plats well and get our voice in. Hey, you got to give us our 10 feet. And that's a lot of work.
Good.
It's interesting that the locates are down, or the new plan, something was down that.
The locates are down. Yeah, they were down by, is it like 400 locates or something?
Yeah,
like
I was surprised by
I
that.
think that speaks to how much snow there is on the ground right now.
People are just like.
I will say the fire rebuilds have slowed down a little bit, so that's one of the reasons it was really high the last couple of years, because these fire rebuilds our guys included, we were digging and constructing all year long. And this is the first year that it has slowed down, like operations, and has been slower this winter, which is well received. And engineering has been slower this winter. Engineering has been really busy with some changes, with processes, and they've been working on a lot of design stuff, preparing, and helping people get ready for construction season. But it's been a slower winter. Yeah.
They've all been working on their plats.
Yes. They're thinking about what they want to do.
Anything more on operations? Finance report, and this was really cool to see. Thank you, Emily.
So as you guys notice, I included both a year-end review as well as a report on the January financials. The year in review is unaudited, obviously, but as Randy said earlier this morning, there are no changes to the margins. There is a little bit of shift in the balance sheet that will increase. Some of the things I included on here are investment in utility plant, for example, at 7.4 million. After the audit adjustment will actually be at 7.8 million, roughly there. So a couple things to highlight for you guys. I won't read it line for line, but the co-op had an excellent year, hence why we were able to book the large deferred revenue adjustment. We exceeded the expectations by pretty significantly. We had a 21% increase in our margins from 2021, and that was substantially higher than the budgeted expectation of 1.39 million. So the investment in utility plant was far exceeded last year's investment. I think that is largely due to the FEMA projects. The co-op's cash position remains really healthy, even though we are down 5 million from 2021. We still have a healthy cash position at 9 million. Let's see, what else should I point out in here? I did include a couple ratios at the bottom of the financial performance. And just to explain to everyone, those ratios, they're a little weird. The lower, the better, right? So if it's less than 1, that is considered healthy. We have really healthy debt to equity ratio at 6.9%. And I'm sorry, 69%, that is. And our debt to total asset ratio is 36%. So those are both really healthy ratios. I've included some financial highlights. You guys are all probably well aware of all of this, but in case you forgot, the RUS buyout was completed and shifted that full transition of debt to CoBank. In July, you all allocated 1.86 million in patronage capital to members from 2021. And 2.25 was paid out, was retired from the year 2001 for Mountain Parks. And part of that also was 1995 and 1996 GNT patronage. We received a total of 2.275 million in FEMA funds. A lot of that came in very last minute, in December, correct, Mark? December. The sale of the Winter Park property netted us a gain of 734,000. As we already discussed, we deferred a net revenue of 1 million, and we did an adjustment for 413,000 for unbilled revenue. So revenues that were recognized in January were moved back into December to reflect revenues actually earned in the proper year. Our membership grew by a total of 446 meters. Only 415 of those were actual new members. The rest of them moved from an inactive status to active. So we have a total active meters of a little over 22,000. We did see 29% increase in our inventory. A lot of that was just more expensive inventory now that we're carrying, but also strategically stocking up on critical items, transformers like 25 kVA, 15 kVA transformers are part of that, as well as stocking up for the large projects that Highway 125 and Trail Creek projects. Mountain Parks donated a total of $17,000 to local charities in 2022. And the education fund made a total of $154,000 in donations. That's great community outreach. that pretty much covers 2022 highlights. Did you guys have any questions on that report at all? Yeah.
I know we had discussed, I think it was in your report, I have a note, but that we changed the Walden hours. Did we ever finalize a secondary location for payments? We were looking at banks and Dollar General or something.
Not yet. So
Yeah, that's in the January report. Yes, you did see that. So yeah, moving on to January, I'll keep it fairly brief. Our net margins are much larger than expected, which is great. I expect that we budgeted fairly conservatively, I would say. Would you say also, Mark?
yes.
So I think we will see that for a good part of the year. It may slow down or flip a little bit during construction season. But I think these healthy margins and during our slow season are really good to see, to kind of help with potential of not meeting our expectations in the summer. Liquidity position remains really strong. Our cash actually increased by about $473,000. We did invest $1.25 million in Charles Schwab CDs. Those range from 1 to 6 months. Interest rates are between 4.3 and 4.9%. And the first CD will mature on March 28th, and we'll just keep rolling those. We do plan to take $500,000 from the education fund and invest. And in addition, as Virginia and I decide that we have a good cash position, we'll continue to invest. And hopefully, so just so you all are aware, we don't have our deferred revenue of $2.5 million is not, we have that cash, but it is not actually restricted in a separate fund or a separate account from the rest of our cash. So my hope is with the Charles Schwab investment accounts that we use that as our restricted funds. So we'll take a little while to build those up. We don't want to do it all at once, but we will hopefully get there this year. In January, we paid out $29,000 in housing stipends to employees. And within my department, we're just working on some professional and personal development trainings, kind of getting those all planned out for the year. Our numbers, sorry?
I had a question. What is BPC?
Oh, best practice.
Okay.
I don't know what the C stands for.
Isn't it business practice?
Oh, is it business practice?
It's through NIS.
Yeah, I knew it was from
It's basically
NIS, and I was
the
like,
best
what
ways
is
to
it?
use their system, and they've got specific measures that they recommend.
Cool.
So our member services, the acronyms, they just went through a 3-day training with NISC. So someone had come in and sat with them. They learned a ton. It was really great to see how excited they were about a lot of the improvements they're going to be able to make to their processes now that they have a little bit more education under their wings. So we should see some improvements there in our billing processes, which is great. Also, Justin, yes, we did, effective March 1st, our Walden office hours have changed 7:30 to 1, Monday through Thursday. And the two MSRs in Walden were both really actually very open to the change. We were a little worried there for a second that this may end up meaning that we need to seek out a new MSR, but they both were on board and actually seemed really excited about it. So that change has been made, and I think it'll be an improvement for our members up there just to have that consistency and coverage. That's pretty much the key points I wanted to hit on. Financials are included in here again. I don't expect any changes to the income statements. Balance sheet will change slightly, so next month we'll have the final audit report, and yeah, it should be good. The Form 7 is completed as well.
Talk about difference in financials to the Form 7 that's usually presented.
Oh, yeah, okay, so the Form 7 and the audited financials will differ by, I think I haven't seen the audit report yet, but did you say 78,000 or 76,000?
I think 78. But I was talking more about
The format.
they are generally presented in the Form 7.
Yeah,
sorry,
this
I
is
forgot that I
different,
changed that
this is
for you.
different for us, but I actually like it.
So, yeah, we have, I think, great financials that come directly out of NISC. They look, if you were to compare the RUS form to how you guys have been seeing them historically, it's the exact same thing. This just, I think, is a bit cleaner of a format, comes directly out of the system, so there's no regurgitating the data into a form and potentially fat fingering something or, so I prefer this format. If you all are, have strong opinions about going back to the RUS form, I'm happy to do it. I wanted to throw these at you all and see how you felt about them.
So this was like last year's. If you go. now
Yeah,
they're
this- these look
this.
better.
I think they look good. The Form 7, yeah, we don't need that anymore either, so.
We still put them into the Form 7 format because the lenders like to see them that way.
Gotcha, and they'll,
Yeah, so CoBank will present basically the Form 7 short form to CoBank quarterly. I don't believe we have to give anything to RUS except for at year end, the long Form 7. And then CFC also and a few other, Tri-State, a few other people request our long Form 7, but as far as on a monthly basis, the Form 7 we don't actually submit it to anyone. So if you all are happy with these financials and the way that it looks, again, if you compare them side by side, they should be the format, like as far as the numbering of the lines and the format of the reports is pretty much exactly the same. This is a RUS Form 7 financial statement. So.
Any other questions on Emily's report?
One other thing I should probably mention to you guys, we didn't do it for January. I wanted a chance to kind of bounce it off the auditors first. I am hoping to make a change with the way that we present our revenues and cost of power. So currently, I know you guys have had these discussions with Stacy historically, that revenue on the face of the financials, revenues and cost of power do not actually match up in the period earned. So we are going to start doing an adjusting entry every month so that we're actually comparing apples to apples and looking at revenues and cost of power compared to each other. And then I'll also be, something new that you'll be seeing on here is our current obligation on long-term debt. I'm going to carve that out of our total long-term debt line item. It's sort of a personal preference, honestly, and it does impact some of the ratios that we present to you guys. We present a current ratio, which is our current assets compared to current liabilities. So by leaving out our current obligation on long-term debt, that ratio is actually not fairly presented. So I'd like to make that correction. Other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Who's giving Joe's report?
Yeah, so Joe is not here this week, so we don't have anybody to give his report. The report is available to you guys on CTO, and if you have any questions, we can try to answer them. There may or may not be somebody in the room who can, and if not, we'll certainly get the answers back to you guys after Joe returns on Monday.
Any questions on Joe's report?
Joe, the IT.
Joe is
Joe's IT director,
Joe
yes.
Palmer is,
are we still looking for another position to be filled within that department?
The system admin, we just.
Yes, and it's in my report.
Okay.
We just had a offer letter sent out last week and it was accepted.
Yes.
So it's not actually the system admin. What Joe did was kind of reorganize his department just a little bit. It's actually another IT tech
Can you let Christian?
position. This gentleman comes to us with over 20 years of experience. Some of that is directly in NISC, which we thought would be a great benefit to Mountain Parks to get everybody on the same page as far as how NISC works and the processes and how it affects the other departments and stuff. So Joe's future plan is to take Tanner, who is the new IT tech, and eventually grow him into the system admin position. And then keep Wes, who is the new one that will be joining us here in a couple of weeks, keep Wes in an IT tech position. So in a roundabout way, yes, it was built.
Welcome, Kristen. Levi Kristen's joined the meeting.
Thank you very much.
All right. We are down to, unless there are any more questions on the IT report, we're to human resources.
So I will just continue just a little bit with the staffing updates. The meter tech position, we did have to start over. We had a candidate that was supposed to come out, and then he had a family emergency, and then the weather, and then the weather again, and we eventually just said, we can't keep postponing for you to come out for a second interview, so we opened that back up. You know, we've had a couple new applicants, so we'll be looking at seeing if any of those are good for an interview. The custodian position, we have an internal candidate that we're going to interview this next week. So we'll keep you posted on that one. And then, of course, we have Rob's position, manager of member relations. We have seen probably about 25 applicants so far. We do have some really good candidates. So Tiffany will start setting those first round interviews up here in the next couple of weeks. And so we hope to get somebody started here shortly after Rob's departure, since nobody provided any chains to keep him here.
I think golden handcuffs we were talking
That
about.
would be good too.
Yeah, I got some chains out in the shop.
And to win.
Let's avoid it.
Bring those to lunch, Adam.
Moving to North Dakota after all those comments that you've always had.
It's a long story.
Putting him on the spot.
Relationship.
Okay, Rob, you're up.
Okay.
APRs. Yeah.
Oh, you're not up.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, I'm good.
Okay. Well, the first item in my report was about our meeting that Craig attended and several of the staff with the Mountain Park Ski Resort. And it was a good meeting. Their primary concern was electrification for people coming up to the ski resort, vehicle electrification, and building out parking lots to accommodate their what they think is an anticipated increase in electric vehicles with their plans, and also their fleet electrification. And so what they wanted to do was to see if there was any agency or resource that we knew of that could help them sort of plan for the future, not just for the ski resort, but actually going out into the town and community as well. So our Gabe and Chris looked into it, and there is actually a grant from the State Energy Office called the Local Government Electric Vehicle Readiness Planning Grant. And so we provided them that information, which is what they requested. And we also reached out to other organizations like SWEEP and haven't heard a reply back yet. But we got them the information they wanted. And then the other thing that Sky said, he was really excited about your negotiation with a new power supplier, and is hopeful that there's something that can save them on their demand charge on their electric bill. And they are excited also about the potential of a fixed rate. So it was a good conversation. I don't know, Craig, do you have anything to add to it?
Just that We almost filled the conference room at the resort, which was good. We had Chris, Rob, Gabe, Adam, me, and then Winter Park was CA and Sky. So I really appreciated the manpower that came out. So we hit them with numbers, which was great. I had some feedback from Sky. A couple of days later, I was working and pulled him aside. And his experience in Vermont was they had a G&T that was kind of no on every question they asked. And then their co-op switched G&Ts, and all of a sudden, you know, the time of day and when to start up snowmaking to save money and, you know, all those operational questions, that G&T was like, well, yeah, I think we can do that. I think we can do that. So it completely changed, you know, how they did business as a major energy user. So I think he's looking forward to maybe some changes there.
More interaction.
In the future, yeah. So I thought for only 2 meetings in, it's going really well. And a shout out to Chris and the team for a very lengthy, informative email back to Sky and CA on all the opportunities. And just as an aside, we talked about, you know, how do we do these grants? How do, you know, who does what? And I just heard that, I'm not sure if it's fully true, but San Miguel hired a grant writer just for the IRA. So we're kind of, you know, we're all playing with that. Who does what? County, towns, ski area, utilities, but they decided they needed enough in-house.
I think Winter Park was referencing there's some $500 million grant that communities can go after, but they need the blessing of their utilities or something. So they're, you know, I'm sure the counties, so anyway, yeah. There's a lot out there.
So, yeah, and we're meeting again in May, so that's the next setup. And I think by then, if I'm correct, Rob, I think by May, Winter Park will know from the higher uppers on their funding for gigantic expansion, whether they get zero or all the money in that.
That's what they said.
Yeah, I think so.
Sure, they have a board meeting, I think.
Yeah.
And then they'll know if it's kind of moving forward with the plan.
Yeah. So that's more to come.
Okay, so scholarships, we just had our deadline, and we have, you might be interested in this, 42 applicants for our scholarships this year. Our scholarship committee meets in about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and they will go over those. By the April board meeting, they should have their list of awardees for you all to see. So that's all being arranged, and 42, it's we've had some years in the 30s. I think our lowest we had was 20, but 42 is a pretty good number, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Any questions on the scholarships?
Is it somewhere in here you had 2 or 3 people on the scholarship committee?
There's 3. There's one sort of representing every school district. The members are, I can't remember, there's a school nurse up in Walden. There is Helen Sedlar has agreed to do it for the Granby area. Our usual person could not do it this year. And then we have Susan Richard over representing the West Grand School District area, which works over at the county courthouse, has done this for many years. So it's a good committee. What's that? Yes, there are at least 1 or 2 of the applicants, I think, that are pursuing trade schools. So, and they're eligible for all scholarships we have. There's no restriction on them. So, okay. I think that's all. You have the annual meeting kind of agenda layout. This is pretty general. We are going to nail down more of the details real soon here. The roundtable discussions that we have the community roundtable and the industry roundtable, and 2 out of the 3 in each of those committees are confirmed. And I think Virginia has some ideas about the industry roundtable person. So we'll talk about that and get you more information on that soon. So those should be all set and good to go, and I'm sure quite interesting. All right, questions?
Sky's new boss is the Winter Park person? Yeah, Buckeyes team.
No, that he's,
Or is he doing that?
yeah, he's doing Aspen skiing.
Oh, it is.
So I don't think I don't think Sky reports to him.
I think he's in charge of all of.
Altera? Yeah, so it's a complicated structure.
Who's where?
But yeah, it's interesting. So for those of you who aren't around here, Jeff Buckeister probably went to school with you,
He's younger.
Little
Or he's
younger?
Older.
a little older, and he skied at the Winter Park Comp Center for a long time. His dad worked at the ski area for
His dad was one of the VPs
the
in the old
VPs, yep,
days.
Jack
Yeah.
Buck. And anyway, he was just named the CEO of Aspen Skiing Company. So
And Altera
And-
Resort.
I don't know.
I don't think
didn't
so. I
read
think
that.
they've kind of kept those separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He came from,
Yeah.
he went from here to eventually Whistler and now at Aspen.
He's COO of Vail
Yeah, he's-
Operations, or Vail Resorts, so that's right.
Anyway. Okay. Bills for payment. Anyone have any questions on the bills for payment?
Maybe just, if somebody want to explain the inactive refunds? They're
Oh,
on there quite a bit frequently.
okay, yes. Could someone explain what an inactive refund is?
Yeah. So the inactive refunds are for inactive electric accounts, right? I mean,
There are people who,
caught off guard a little bit too, but
People that are no longer members.
but they had, for some reason, they had a balance with
Yes.
us and we needed, like, so they
They had a
paid a big
positive balance.
deposit,
Yeah.
a big deposit or a.
Another one we see frequently is, like less frequently now is,
Engineering one,
which one?
the refund.
Yeah, refunds from construction if they,
The estimate is off.
yeah, but I think there used to be a lot of them, but it seems like there's fewer and fewer now.
they'll probably ramp back up once we're back in construction season and, because we're reconciling the work orders.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I would imagine that right now you're not seeing very many just because we don't have a lot of work orders coming to close and that we're reconciling.
And also that the prices are going up.
Yeah. I think the
Yeah,
trend is
that we
also
may
that
see
we
actual
have to collect more than we pay back.
Billings,
Yeah.
yes, that's true as well. But if our estimates are
Hopefully,
very
yeah.
solid.
Yes.
That's what I was going for with
Yeah, I'm
the
hoping
estimating
most
approach, I feel is more.
Closer.
Right. Kristen,
Yeah, a question about the estimating approach. I recall from a previous meeting that there were certain accounts where there is an estimate and then there is a true up at the end, and then certain types of connections where there's not. Could you refresh my memory on which is which? Like for small connections, do we do a true up or is it only for the major accounts?
that's a good question. And I remember we talked about this and we did discuss which accounts, and I don't remember which they are. And maybe we could get an answer to we're waiting here,
Yeah.
Kristen's question is now.
the reconciliation.
Oh, okay. So we've developed, we've developed the simple service that we would not be reconciling any of those jobs. It's just gonna be a flat rate. And it's just gonna be, we've decided on, which is a 200 amp meter bed. It's gonna be installed within 20 feet of the transformer. That'll include capacity of a transformer. And we've just done that for the efficiency standpoint. We're trying to promote meter beds. Any other type of services, we're looking at like a meter on a house or meters that are going to be installed outside of that 20 feet. Primary line extensions, all of those jobs moving forward are going to be reconciled. They're bigger dollar amounts, and I know in the past maybe we haven't reconcile the jobs that come in under the amount. The way I understand it moving forward, we're going to reconcile those jobs also. So that's kind of our new approach. And it's a lot of that's driven by inflation and last year we had prices that it rose like 400% in conduit last year. We had a job not too long ago that we estimated, and a month later that job was $8,000 more. So we got to be able to reconcile jobs. And then we've done a lot of changes to try to shorten up the start to finish of completion of jobs. Such as we won't even send a contract on a lot of our new workflows until we see a meter release. In the past, we would do a contract right away. You might not be ready for us to do our side of the work for up to a year. But you can imagine in the way things are going right now, in a year's time, a lot changed in the price of wire and the price of conduit, which was causing us to basically, if we didn't reconcile, you would be, the prices would just be extremely different. So we're trying to shorten that up so that we're not sending invoices up to every one of these jobs. But hopefully that kind of answers what we got going on.
So for clarification, if the question is which ones are based on estimates and are there some that are not, the only ones that are not based on estimates are the ones that are the simple service.
That's correct.
And the simple service is a specific type of service where you have a meter ped, meaning your meter's not on your house, standing out on a pedestal within 20 feet of your transformer. And so
it's just going to be a flat charge.
That would be a flat charge. That would not be.
It's a flat charge that's going to be we'll have to even reevaluate that charge probably every 3 months or so. Every other type of job does not fit in a box. Every one of them is different, and there's not one price you can put on every other type of project out there.
Adam, would any type of member, any type of service have the option to do the simple service, or is it not going to be applicable to everybody?
Any person that wants a 200 amp service could get a simple service. Anything other than that, it's out of that scope.
I will also add that there are sometimes HOA rules that would prohibit a member from getting a simple service because that is going to be a meter ped by the transformer. So it's a visible piece of equipment sitting out there rather than being on your house. So that could also be a limiting factor for some members.
Yeah, and when we discuss this in depth, because there's a huge issue here of trying to close these jobs sooner. Right now, of these old jobs, we have about 300 jobs sitting in a drawer that they range from anywhere from 6 months to 2 years old. And every one of those jobs is going to have to be reconciled, and as we discussed, material has changed. But some utilities, I'm going to use Poudre Valley, for example, city of Colorado Springs, they only do meter peds because of all these other issues that can happen outside of that scope of work. But we don't want to do that. We want to have the option to go meter on a house. But like I said, we've made changes such as waiting on a meter release. Then we'll go do the job. Then we can close the job in a timely manner and hopefully not have that huge reconciliation problem at the end.
Kristen, did
Thanks.
that answer? Okay.
It did, but I will note that he said that this is kind of speculative going forward. So this has not been instituted yet. And my main question is, does the board need to approve a change if we're changing the way that we charge this? Do we need to do a notice per Colorado law?
Is it a tariff? I don't think it's a tariff.
Okay.
But we would have to ask Levi, but I don't believe. If you go on the website, you can look at the simple service product, which is pretty cool if someone is thinking of building.
And I think it's important.
And is that 5,000?
It's around 5,000. We're actually, before we put a price out there, we're gonna reevaluate it probably on the beginning of next week before we put it out there. We were trying to wait till we were a little bit closer to construction season before we put that price on it. But we'll
Right now, our estimate is right around 5,000.
And we are having meetings with
Yeah, we have several meetings lined up to try to communicate our changes. We're meeting with the Grant County Builders Association next week. And then we're implementing an open house that's going to be the first week of April here at Mountain Parks, where we've invited local electricians, builders, developers. We've tried to get the word out to everybody we can, and we're going to go over these changes that we've talked about. Yeah, we're trying to communicate it out there the best we can.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Board open forum and associated reports. Oops, did I forget? Oh, the credit cards. People, you guys are, I don't know what I'm going to do without Mark. Skipping over.
Virginia, I told Virginia she needs to.
Keep a close eye on Liz. Has everyone looked at the credit card payment charges? And are there?
For these are employees that have a company credit card, and the charges are.
Okay, seeing no questions, we're going to now move on to board open forum and associated reports. Was there a Western United board meeting?
No.
Other than
There was the annual meeting, which
yeah.
did you rep that?
Yeah, I did. I'll go.
Give a briefing?
I will. Cray, do you want to talk about CREA at all?
Just quickly, the CREA board meeting was February 22nd. I attended by Zoom. There was talk about grant writing support, and there's been email CREA and NRECA. There was a thank you to Jeff for his service from Mountain Parks Electric to the CREA board for his years of service. So there's a big thank you there. There was an open forum that was not the most pleasant experience to me being a new board member. And it was my second meeting, so I did a really good job of listening and didn't contribute at all. But the open forum, I think the takeaways are some people highlighted the things that CREA does really well, which is the safety training, the education, the community support, the magazine, and that was very positive. And during this open forum, with all the unfortunate negative comments, people, at times came around and said, well, let's remember the things we do well. So the open forum was quite interesting from the aspect of what CREA does on the legislative front. And that was, they seemed like there were very many members that want to put the brakes on in terms of looking towards the future. And they're concerned with supply chain issues and all sorts of things. The member from Holy Cross said, well, we're not putting on the brakes. We have our foot fully on the accelerator, which was really a nice comment. But so that's about all I'll say. The minutes of that meeting did not reflect at all what was really said, which is probably appropriate. But there is, I don't know, I'm too new to the board to know if that's like a vocal minority that's kind of against changes that are coming, or if it's truly the CREA's position. But both the board president and the Kent Singer, I give them credit that they were really good because it was called open forum and they let everybody speak. And it was most unpleasant for a professional trade organization. It's a professional trade organization. That's how I look at it.
And I was there in person. It wasn't any better in person.
I imagine it was worse because on Zoom, I could just
It
turn the
was-
volume.
There's a diversity of
Yeah.
opinion about how CREA should go about their legislative lobbying and strategy on some of these issues. And
Yes.
some members feel very strongly about things and they've got, anyway, so.
Yeah, the
focus
tenor
on
of it was,
things.
it turned very political
Right.
very quickly, which is, I guess, the nature of the beast these days, unfortunately. But again, a professional trade organization, it was a little embarrassing. So, but everybody got their views out, which was, I guess, a good thing. But again, in closing, I want to emphasize the folks that said what CREA does very well, which is magazine, community, education, safety training. Everybody's completely on board. So 80% of the program is great. So
It is something that has been ongoing for a period of time. I would say it has come to a head the last year or so. The meeting that was held in Durango, which was a joint meeting with the board and the managers, I would say that it was a similar experience, although maybe not quite as vocal.
And I think the other thing that Craig didn't mention is, and we may have talked about it before, but I forgot. CORE, which is the largest co-op in Colorado, was a member of CREA and they have dropped out, which has been a big hit to CREA's budget. And
they exited in September of last year.
Right after that Durango meeting, perhaps. Hard to know exactly
They
why.
actually, I don't think, came to the Durango meeting. They had announced it earlier than that to give CREA some time to prepare for the fact, because it was part of the discussion and creation of the budget. And that was part of why the previous meeting was robust discussion.
Yes.
Because, and what it started this discussion about what they do well and what they don't, because that was, lose a large contributor like CORE, then you have to make adjustments either in what you do or how much you charge, or both.
Yeah. And to that end, there was that question, if you remember, what kind of term would you like to support your membership in CREA? And the first box was 5 years.
Yes.
And somebody made the comment and says, I'm only signing up year to year. So there's people that are interested in supporting them, and I think other members that are not. But again, they do some wonderful things in four out of the 5 categories.
So they have a survey, and I think I have the survey, I will share it. It's a paper survey. Okay, Western United, I went to their annual meeting. They highlighted all the supply chain issues and how fast the St. George area continues to grow, and they're out on that. It's kind of a highlight of that. Carl, do you have a tri-state report?
Yes, I do.
Would you like
want me to go ahead?
Yeah, I'd like you to share it.
Okay, we had meetings February 27th, 28th, and March 1st. Some of the highlights from Dwayne's report. I think the rest was sent at board highlights to everyone, but there was a $10 million human error in the 10K filing on the draft one. It was found and will be fixed before the final filing. It caused that $10 million more from deferred revenue will have to be put in to fill up that. United and Kit Carson want a WAPA allocation of hydropower. Kit Carson has never had an allocation. United has. WAPA has come out with the opinion that those allocations have been designated to Tri-State, and so they probably won't do anything about that unless directed by some higher authority. Tri-State is going to voluntarily file with the PUC of Colorado about what federal dollars they are going after and how they will utilize it. It's required by IOUs, but not co-ops. Dwayne will speak at a at NRECA meeting in Nashville, which took place either this week or last week, I think.
This week, I think.
Okay. WAPA is holding a public comment period on joining SPP, RTO West. So if anybody has any comments, I think you can probably get on a website and find out how to do that. And then the vote on the new rate design, which I thought was going to take place in March, but it didn't, will be June 5th at the board meeting. And I think it's a total virtual meeting, so that's all I have, unless there's questions.
RTO, what's the RTO West? Is that a part of SPP or something, a separate RTO from SPP?
No, that's SPP RTO West. That's the
full name.
The new division of SPP across the DC tie line.
Carl, on the rate design, has the Tri-State Board seen the complete tariff or recommendation? Other than
yes,
what?
we saw the recommendation from the RDC. Had a lot of discussion on it, whatnot. Don't know what the percentage increase it will bring to Tri-State members at this point, but yes, we had a briefing on it, so.
We lost everybody. Carl, are you there? Are you still there?
Going in and out.
I'm here.
No,
we lost.
You didn't hear the end of your description of the rate. What percent? You said what percent? It's unclear what percent the increase will be to members. But then we lost you.
Okay, well, that was essentially the end of it. I don't know what the percent increase to members will be because of the new rate design. But I hope to find that out in April. Then the minority reports will come in. I think most of them will be written. The option is to make a presentation at the Tri-State Board, but I don't think anybody's planning on doing that at this point.
So the original notice was provided, the vote on June 5th is the final vote?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Dwayne sent it out to the members, but it was a very high level description of what the rate would be. And it didn't include, for example, the minimum DSR or the minimum margin requirement that they wanted to put in the formula. It was just that it was a formula rate, that they wouldn't do direct assignment so that's why I asked Carl what the board was presented with, because I'm curious. Then I, you know, 90 days notice of it. Go ahead, Carl.
And the board was presented with all the various aspects of the new rate design, but nobody equated it into what kind of percentage increase the new rate design, if it's accepted and implemented, what that will mean to the membership. And previous meetings, it's been described to me as possibly a 5 to a 10% increase, but nobody's put a number on it.
So I think there's two different aspects of it. And one is how the rate design, changing the components in the rate design will affect individual members based on their load profiles. And we have seen that analysis based on, I think, 20 and 21, years 20 and 21 for Mountain Park. So all the members got sort of the broad, here's how this new rate design would work for that year, and you can compare. What it didn't compare is the formula aspect of it. And then what you're talking about, Carl, is Tri-State needs a certain amount of revenue, much more than they've been collecting for the last 2 years. Layered on top of that rate design, what does that actually mean for each co-op?
Oh, I agree, Liz. You probably know more about this since you sat on the RDC, but it's not clear to me at this point what the percent increase the new rate design with all the aspects that the committee came up with incorporated, what the percentage increase will be.
Well, and I think the other question, Carl, is since they're filing it June this year, and they say the effective date is January, but they aren't really, but they also say they may need to write it so it goes into effect sooner than that. If they're using the 2023 budget for that revenue requirement, that's going to be much different than if they were to use the 2024 budget, which I don't think you guys have approved. And so there may not be much of a difference in 2023. What will happen is eventually it'll get trued up to that next budget. Going forward, not going backwards.
Yeah, I don't think they anticipate the new rate design to take effect, the formula rate and all that, until January 1st of 2024. So that's the budget that will be used, but the true-up will take place probably 2 years after the fact. In other words, the true-up for the new rate, if it's accepted and goes into effect January 2024, won't be until 2026.
All right. Anything else on Tri-State?
So
that's all I have.
Yeah. We will
we get the feeling that a little bit ago when we thought there might be a rate increase in August,
so it's probably not going to be in August, but based on the minutes from the RDC, there's so many questions. I mean, first of all, whether FERC accepts the rate, it would be the very first question. If they accept it and put it in, allow them to collect it. And that's going to depend on what Tri-State submits to them and who opposes it.
Okay.
I think
they have a cushion built in, but it is a slim cushion. I mean, to you and I, it's a bunch of money, but to them, it's a slim cushion. And part of that is, if there are increases or errors, And that may require the discussion at the last manager meeting with Dwayne and Pat Bridges, their CFO. It may require, you know, their intent is still January 1 of 24, but it could require that they do something before that. And I think what they were suggesting was November.
So our recent messages in Country Life are still totally appropriate.
They're still totally appropriate because the answer to the question is we don't know. And the answer to the question is they don't know.
It'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting year.
Sorry, I'm gonna just clarification question from Mark. When you said that they were thinking that the rate change may need to go into effect in November, that was prior to the discovery of the $10 million error?
That was prior to the discovery, yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I was clear on that point.
But then one of the questions is whether or not FERC accepts the filing
period.
Because they won't be able to put it into effect unless FERC allows them to accept it.
And the error was on the.
To the bad.
To the bad. Correct, the error was to
The
the bad.
error was in 22.
Okay.
And it had to do with the asset retirement obligation related to plans or mines.
How much deferred revenue do they have left? Didn't they have 250 million or no?
I think that is open to interpretation as well. If you review the financial statements that are available, it would suggest that virtually all of it was gone in 22. At that meeting with the managers, they suggested that there was a small amount of deferred revenue that would be carried over into 23. That, of course, is now reduced by that $10 million.
And it was expressed to us that there is, after the 10 million, that there is about 37 million still in deferred revenue.
Thanks, Carl.
You may notice the projector screen blinking. We think it's the projector, possibly the core. We're not IT people. But it's not affecting the YouTube live stream, in case you're wondering.
Okay. Are there other questions for Carl? Other open board report issues or comments?
Just a couple updates on the Colorado Energy Code Board. Colorado's Energy Code Board is approaching a vote on the solar and EV ready codes for residential and commercial buildings. The upshot, I think, for Mountain Parks Electric is that in the future, it is unlikely that we're going to be seeing service panels under 200 amps installed, at least for residential. But there's kind of an interesting situation. So the code is likely going to be requiring that future homes that are constructed be electric ready. And what that essentially means is having, a 220 in the garage, if there's a garage for EV charging in the future, and also having a 220 outlet in the utility closet in case people want to upgrade to a heat pump from a gas unit. But what that means is that, because gas is not prohibited, people will likely keep building, gas heated homes here, but they may be installing very large service panels. So when we're doing our distribution system planning, that's something to consider, right? Because we maybe see people order 200 amp and above service panels, but not see the subsequent demand that you might expect from such a large service panel. So I might follow up separately just to kind of better understand what perhaps some of the cost implications might be for builders, so I can better report back to the Energy Code Board. So expect a vote coming up on that probably in the coming month. Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen. That's a great point. Go ahead.
Adam, so we will order all 200 amp transformers, 200.
So
Instead of
there is some
1500
old services out there, or small services that are 100 amp. Most new homes are 200 amp or bigger. 200 amp would be the most common. We're seeing a lot of
exactly what Kristen was talking about when they're doing the EV chargers and stuff like that. It's typically a 320 amp or bigger service, which some of that equipment is harder to get and stuff like that. It's also, it's definitely an engineering quandary, I guess I would say. Just like she was saying, we're building all this infrastructure for a load that may or may not be there. So it's kind of, we have to figure out, what load are you actually going to use and build for that. Otherwise, we're going to have this massive system to upkeep and to build, and we may need more circuits and all kinds of stuff. But maybe we don't need that if you're not going to actually use your car charger or actually use your electric heat pump. So it's definitely one of the things that we're working on right now with trying to balance load and thinking about the future of what we need to do. But there's a lot of new factors coming into play, just like what Kristen was talking about that people are building.
And I think it's important.
Well, you actually, United as the rep going, we're 2 years out on transformers going, to the foresight going, holy cow, when this stuff gets enacted, are we gonna be still 2 years out, be sitting on a lot of 200, 200 or
really hard to predict.
1,500?
Yeah.
I go on and that's obsolete already in 2 years. Supply chain issues plus the building codes.
That's where it takes good engineering work. It takes good engineering work to say, just because they're putting in this panel doesn't necessarily mean that that's the load, working with the customer and try to have a good idea of what the load is actually going to be so that we can correctly size our transformers. But it also takes paying attention to what the transformers are actually pulling to see when you need to go and change and upgrade one.
Yeah, right, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And how do you make sure they tell you when they switched electric heat and start using the EV charger?
It's challenging. You can.
Yeah, but that's a system we have.
Yep, that's
sometimes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's also important to note that, when changes like this take effect, that the cost to the member is more, right? If you're ordering more expensive, higher level equipment, it's going to cost more. Members will see an increase there, and that could be something they come to the board with and say, hey, what happened to prices on new services? So just be aware that we have to help educate them as to what the laws are and why we're required to put in services at certain times.
Yeah.
I think there may be an opportunity here for future member communications, to do more collaboration with the Ground Builders Association, because if you're installing that infrastructure and you're paying for it, you might as well contemplate a heat pump. And I think there is good awareness of all of the incentives that we have for that, but maybe not yet a broad awareness, and especially with some of the new incentives that the state is contemplating now. There's new legislation with significant additional heat pump incentives. It really could be financially beneficial for people to actually contemplate that, even up here in our cold climate. So with that, that's it.
Justin, you had a...
Kristen, have you guys looked at all? I mean, I know that there's still a discrepancy on load sheets in general for lighting and things like that. Have you guys looked at adopting that to be more consistent with LED lighting and other low voltage type devices? I know when you're still doing a load sheet, you're accounting for if somebody's putting in light bulbs that are, now 20 years old for this huge house.
I know, it's kind of ridiculous.
I mean, you can't even hardly buy incandescent light bulbs, so why are we putting load sheets together that have that in there on the building code still?
I couldn't agree more. The Energy Code Board is not getting into that level of detail. It's, we're keeping it fairly high level. The most stuff we're spending on the most time we're spending now is on the exemptions for commercial. So there's like a provision in the legislation that essentially allows you to exempt the energy electrification requirements if it comes in like 1% higher in your M&E quote. So unfortunately, we're not getting into the level of load sheets, but I couldn't agree more that, I think a lot of these load sheets are overestimating compared to what the actual demand comes out to be.
Thanks.
Anything else? I give my, just I went to the CREA meetings. NRECA was there to talk about the grant consortiums. I'm not sure if the info was in any of those. Anyway.
This is CREA annual meeting?
Yeah, the annual meeting. It was actually a pretty good presentation. Emily and Mark and I went, and they talked about grid grip and there's an ERA part that's $1 billion for rural, for electricity providers in rural areas, of which we are one. And that, so the woman said that she thought the grid would have a second round in the fall, and that the ERA actually, NRECA is closing their consortium on March 17th for that. And that's kind of a wide open, the way she described it, a wide open pot of money. It could be used for transformers, upgrading electrical, like what we would need to do to serve the EV buses at the school, you know, like that transformer, that line upgrade, whatever we need to do. But it's pretty much wide open resiliency and hardening your grid and microgrid stuff. I think that opportunity's open, but as far as when it closes, I don't know. I just listened to her. So, Kristen, I took the EV preparedness class that's through NRECA. I think the most interesting thing about it was kind of what we're talking about right now is we all think, okay, everybody has these EVs and they all charge at once and they're all going to charge the maximum amount and the grid's going to be overloaded. They did a study down, I think Duke might have done it, and they found that charging was much more dispersed and it didn't have the same impact. That it was more like hot water heaters. And so it wasn't like everybody was charging at exactly the same time in huge amounts. Now, we probably should get more than one study's worth, but I was like, that was somewhat reassuring, you know. I'm on the best part about, then we had the strategic planning class. Kristen and I took it. I think it was a review, but it was good. The best part of those meetings, and I'll say this to all of you guys, because we've had COVID and I know we haven't gone to too many meetings like this. The best part was talking to the directors from the other co-ops, finding out what they're doing, getting to know them better. It's just such a valuable aspect of those meetings. I'm on the Energy Bill Relief Working Group. You probably saw the CREA minutes about that. It's a group of utilities. I'm definitely way above my pay grade. It's like, you know, Excel and Atmos and Black Hills, and they're trying to figure out how to provide some certainty and relief to Colorado residents who are upset about the volatility and price increases of their utility bills.
This is the Energy Bill Relief what?
Working group. And it's.
You were appointed as.
I was invited
by.
To participate by Mark Silberg, who's the governor's.
So this is as Mountain Parks Director or as?
Yes, no, it's because of my role at Mountain Park.
Okay.
Thanks.
It's not necessarily, I wouldn't say you're not representing your organization per se.
Chosen based on your.
Yeah, but it's trying to get people in a room who have some experience, who can think through how to solve some of the challenges that Colorado.
National or Colorado?
It's Colorado. And it's related to, the governor sent out a letter. I sent it to all of you guys. There's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages of sort of the things the governor feels like could get tackled that would help with utility bills. And so this group is going to go through, and one of the aspects of it is, let's get some of that federal money into the state. So that's the part I'm kind of interested in. But this group is going to go through that letter and sort of try to hit the points that he's hit and come up with a response or actions that make sense. And it's not a legislative, it's more like, it's not a legislative policy thing. It's more like, here's what we might be able to do to solve this problem. So that's that. We've just had the first meeting. It was very broad in general. It was the first setup. Also spent more time looking at the driver's ed behind the wheel issue, talking to the company that's offered it in the past, learning more about their efforts to get an employee up here to do it. I need to spend I've gotten some new numbers from them, what it might cost them to provide behind the wheel. I need to talk to Emily and Bethany and look at historical numbers of students who've used that, so we have a better idea of how that would affect the education fund. Then, if with your blessing, after we have those numbers, then they would advertise for that position again, but at a much higher rate of pay, so that they would hopefully get someone who it would be worth their while to offer it. The other thing that they pointed out is there may be legislation in Colorado that would require behind the wheel training in order to get a license prior to the age of 18. That would totally change our numbers. That would probably take them from, so the woman had told me that we had 40 to 60 students in between West Grand and East Grand doing the behind the wheel training. I think they're close to 130 seniors in those two schools. So that would really, if everyone was taking driver's ed, that'd be a big jump. There's a charitable trust meeting on March 21st. Kristen, are you going to be back by then?
I will indeed.
Okay, so you and Justin can maybe go make that charitable trust meeting, hopefully.
Please send me the calendar invite.
Okay.
Just let me know if it gets canceled.
Yeah, well, hopefully it won't be blizzarding.
Showed up.
Just a reminder to the board, you have a busy April. We have the Tri-State Annual Meeting. Kristen, you're the alternative delegate.
Okay.
That's the 4th and 5th. We have a Mountain Parks meeting on the 13th. We have strategic planning on the 18th and the 19th. May's a busy month. We have our Mountain Parks meeting on the 11th, our annual meeting on the 13th, and our power supply workshop tentatively scheduled for May 16th. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that those 2 months are going to get busy.
And our little winter park meeting.
And we have the Little Winter Park meeting. And then for longer planning out there, there's the CoBank conference in late July. It's at the Broadmoor, and it's their energy directors conference. That's a very good conference. I've been to it. I would recommend if people want to go. It really gives you insight. I reported to the board 4 years ago, maybe, that the international folks said, really pay attention to what happens between Russia and Europe. Yeah, they're kind of right. And it was just very insightful. And then CFC has a statewide conference in Avon the end of August, and I think that's focused more on financial learning for boards. But the last board thing is how many of you guys have done your 990, the 2022? Bethany sent out the 2022 990 survey questionnaire. We need to get those in. If you're looking, everybody's okay. So we'll send another tickler out on that. Do the strategic planning survey. Carl, did you do your no before? And then
did I do my what? Did I do my what?
Your internet, your cybersecurity training.
No, I haven't.
Okay, all right. I'm just giving you a hard time, you know. The other thing I would challenge the board, I have to come up and do it with you, I think. I'd like to challenge the board to think about the 2 other events they're going to do this year that are community related. So whether it's helping out with the parades in wherever you are, 5th quarter, Rob's not going to be doing the hot dogs on the Halloween thing in Granby like we always used to do, the National Night Out. It's really important to get out. For me, the 5th quarter has been just amazing. So think about 2 events you're going to do that are Mountain Parks events that have to do with the community this year. With that, I'll shut up.
We do have, they are planning a electric bike test drive event again, working with the local Two Pines to try to do it in May or June. And with the Ford Lightning, we plan some Ford Lightning electric vehicle test drives. I know we're looking at Kremling Days and possibly both the fairs and involvement in Kremling with those and maybe some other events too. So tentative plans, we're waiting for the snow to melt. Not a great time to test drive things when the roads are icy.
Are we looking at those town hall community?
Right, the coffee
Monday
things
to
we did.
coffee shop, are we doing that going forward again, or was that sort of a?
I think we need to talk with Jenny and see what she might, and probably talk with the board.
Yeah.
But we ended all of the ones that were scheduled.
We did.
Last weekend.
We talked about some kind of open house events when we thought there would be a possibility of a before year-end rate increase with the community. So didn't need to do that after all, I think. But I don't know.
We probably shouldn't. But the coffee, I thought those coffee things were really good.
Well received.
Not a lot of people showed up.
You know what I think about those events and the test drive that we do? PC members that don't stop into our lobby, some of them don't read the magazine, they don't come to the annual meeting. And we're getting to talk to members we would never see anywhere else. So I think those have value, as long as you're getting, even the event we had out here where we let people try out an electric lawnmower and weed blower and all of our weed whacker and leaf blower. You get people that you just never see, and that's a good positive touch with that event with the electric stuff. We had almost as many people as we had at the end of the meeting. Yeah.
And I think 2 of my neighbors got electric lawnmowers after that. I was the only one that still has the gas.
Every Monday, they just post the lawn out there. Oh, how that.
That's right.
There you go.
How Mr.
I'm sorry to paint the fence.
Okay, so we're kind of through, I guess we have we have old business and new business. I don't think we have any old business or new business, but we do have some emergency business having to do with, we need to appoint a treasurer. And Kristen, will you send me a text and let me know? I don't want to, since this is being live streamed, I prefer that you send me a text and let me know when you'd be back in, because we may need to appoint a different secretary in order to get something signed.
Got it.
But in the meantime, with Jeff gone, we need to elect a new treasurer. So
For Mountain Park
for
Services?
for Mountain Parks, because Jeff Houck was the treasurer.
So I think I'm
And
the treasurer.
you're for the services, I think. So you want to take on
Should
the
I do
treasurer?
both?
You should do both.
I'm volunteering now.
You've been voluntold.
I'd love to do it.
Okay, make the motion, Mark. Craig?
Make the motion before it's me.
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig.
I was already.
Okay. All in favor of Craig becoming the treasurer of Mountain Parks Electric?
Aye.
Okay. The motion passes. Okay. Okay. Does that give us? Okay. Okay.
You just slid right into that job.
Yeah, how's your driver's ed?
So, take that run off.
I just want to drive the snowcat. That's all I want to do.
Not March one? The old one or the digger dare?
Either one.
Okay, okay, so we need to elect the secretary. Okay, so Kristen, we're gonna elect, and Levi's gonna have to tell me how to do this.
Sounds good.
Kristen's our current secretary. We would like to have another secretary given the transition, because we have to get some things signed.
Transition or because she's gone?
She's gone, we have a transition going on and people need access to accounts.
I got you.
And so
So we just need to appoint a secretary to act in.
the acting secretary,
Kristen's
that,
absence.
yeah, can we appoint an acting secretary?
Yep.
Justin, would you like to be the acting secretary? I know you've got a lot on your plate. I think it's all.
Taking notes today.
I know she's pretty good at that.
Yes.
Okay, could I have a motion that would make Justin the acting secretary?
I'll move that to Justin.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of having Justin become the acting secretary?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Until when?
Okay.
Yep.
That was, I'm forever. Indefinite.
Okay, do we need any motion regarding the COBAS? Let's begin this because she'll knew it.
So this is, Justin will have to sign his name there, and then it's resolving that you will be the certifier and that I will be the administrator for the RUS.
RUS. Okay, so the first item that we're wanting you guys to look at is, we'll have to change this to Justin as the secretary. But basically, it's the board resolving that I, in a general manager position, and I serve as the certifier for RUS, and that Emily Meek, as the CFO, serves as the administrator for our RUS account. That's for us to conduct all the business we have to with RUS, including submitting our Form 7 and things like that. So that's the first resolution is that one through RUS.
Okay, so.
We'll need to, so real quick, so if, for the minutes,
You want to?
we'll either,
You want to read it out loud?
no, not necessarily. The board can review it if they want to. No, I was just gonna say, but so we just need to make sure that we have a copy of that in the minutes. The minutes will say that the board has approved this resolution, and that will need to be saved with that.
Okay.
Do you guys want it read in full?
Okay. So I would like the board to make a motion that approves this, how do I say it, Levi, approves this resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then they will reprint this with your name and you can sign it. Okay.
This is the one that they'll actually sign because there's Justin's name on this. This one will be for Justin.
Okay.
Maybe pass it around to all the boards.
Yeah, absolutely. Just read the top one. That'll work.
In addition to gain us access, saying that certifier on seven and it's just an additional form that RUS needs to get this Virginia set up.
Additional form, no resolution necessary. It's an additional RUS form that's needed to be signed in order to have both Emily and I officially set up to perform those roles under RUS. So you guys can look at that. That will also have to be executed.
Permission forms to allow you and access on business.
do we need a resolution on the co-bank?
I'd recommend doing a resolution that, because we are changing who the authorized signatories are for the organization. And we're removing Mark, right? So this is the form that has to be signed by all of the officers of the organization in order to change the authorized signatories to include me as general manager, Emily as CFO, treasurer, all these new positions. So I would recommend doing a resolution to, how would we want to say it, to adopt?
So CoBank, I would think they would have their own resolution, no?
There's not a resolution attached to it, just all the signatory pages.
It's just a form that they have that you fill out and
They aren't the RUS.
officers of the organization sign, so they know who they are.
But you're changing who those signatories are, so.
Supersedes the current
Oh.
instancy that they have on file.
So these have all been, so these actions have all been done. Actually,
If you don't think we need
No.
one, I would
Yep.
defer to you.
Yep.
So then just board
So yeah,
awareness.
this will, in terms of secretarial, treasurer, signatures, and then Justin as
So if
secretary,
you're the,
certified.
you're
to
the
us.
acting secretary or the treasurer or the president.
Or the vice president.
You need to
Everyone
sign
has
these
to sign
forms.
this.
We all have to sign before we get out of here.
I think those are all that we had under emergency business. Yes.
Should we just sign them now for June?
Okay, well, we're going to have, hold on just a second. We have 13 minutes until lunch. And so maybe we can, let's make sure we're all through. Kristen, we're going to break and have lunch, and then we'll come back in at 1 for an executive session.
Okay.
And the live stream can probably be cut off now. Do we want to go into executive session?
To keep it on until you pass the motion.
Yeah, do we want to go into executive session now, probably?
You need to see whether or not it's necessary to have a non-person.
Is it necessary to have a Mountain Park Services meeting? Okay, so let's have a motion to go into executive session, then we will take a break.
For power supply, ongoing litigation,
Ongoing litigation.
and personnel.
Is there a motion?
Yes.
Cray moved. Mark Volt.
Second.
Chris